Edition of Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robbie Stanley, the great Adam Vingan in the house this morning as well. Ryan Porth back from vacation. Fellas, what's going on, Adam? How we doing? How was your holiday weekend?
It was good. Of course, I am not Joe Rexrode.
You're not? Joe Rexrode on vacation?
Now on vacation in California, right?
I believe that is correct.
So he's not listening because it's 3 a.m. But hi, Joe, when you inevitably pull up the podcast later.
That's
Hope
right.
you're having a wonderful start to your vacation. My weekend was good. Did some yard work, had a cookout. Well, I didn't have the cookout. I was invited to the cookout.
Very nice.
I just ate what was served. Watched the Nathan's famous hot dog eating contest, or what I could. The ESPN feed was having some technical difficulties during the live feed. It just could not handle the sheer dominance of Joey Chestnut, and it screwed up the feed.
Another record for Joey Chestnut. 76 hot dogs consumed in 10 minutes.
It's insane.
What an American champion that man is. I know that you've witnessed Joey Chestnut in action in person one time.
Yes.
A little bit of a different situation, though.
Yes, a couple of years ago when the Predators were in San Jose to play the Sharks, Joey Chestnut is from San Jose, and the night before the game, I was going out to dinner in San Jose, and as I was waiting for a friend, someone walked by me, and I thought to myself, is that Joey Chestnut? He was with his wife, I presume. And I went out to dinner, and when I left the restaurant I was at and walked back toward my hotel, there was another restaurant next door with outdoor seating, and Joey Chestnut was there with his wife, eating a normal-sized portion with a fork and a knife. And I just thought to myself, that is one of the most jarring things I've ever seen in my life. I just thought that Joey Chestnut ate all of his meals like he eats those hot dogs, but no.
Just scarfing them down. The American tradition continues. What a time for the Nathan's famous hot dog eating contest.
It was great to see a crowd again. Last year, of course, because of the pandemic, there was no crowd, or there was an incredibly limited crowd. There were plexiglass boards separating each contestant. It's one of my bucket list items to attend the Nathan's hot dog eating contest.
Okay.
So I would love to go one day. When I told that to my dad over the weekend, he's like, that's a weird bucket list. And I was like, well, it looks like a lot of fun. And then I went down the rabbit hole of looking at Joey Chestnut's other eating records, and man, the things that he has been able to consume, the two that I can remember off the top of my head are both breakfast related, since it is 6 a.m.
Yeah.
He once ate, I believe it was 82 Eggo waffles in 8 minutes, and the other one was 257 Hostess donuts, the mini donuts, in 8 minutes.
What an athlete he is.
Would you consider him an athlete?
I don't know, Porth. What do you think? Is that an athletic competition?
No.
I mean, it takes some skill.
It requires discipline as much as one can be, as much as gorging 76 hot dogs can require discipline. But it does require training. He doesn't just go into it cold.
A lot of things require training that aren't considered athletic. This is not – Joey Chestnut is not an athlete.
So you would not consider him a dynasty?
He's a dynasty, but not in an athletic sport. Just in a hot dog eating contest.
I think he'd be one of the greatest athletes our country has to offer, Porth. It doesn't get much better than 76 hot dogs in 10 minutes.
It doesn't get much better than that.
Well, how long?
Actually, doesn't get any better than that. It's a world record.
The question is, so he ate 76 hot dogs in 10 minutes. How long do you think it's when you look back at the last 76 hot dogs that you've consumed? Like, how long over time do you think it's been since you've consumed 76 hot dogs? For me, it's been at least several years. Maybe a few. We'll go with a few years, not several years.
I mean, probably since I was 6.
You're not a big hot dog
guy, I've
I guess.
had 76 hot dogs in the last 22 years. Be my guess.
So do brats count?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, well then in this calendar year of 2021.
You've had 76 hot dog-like foods this year?
Sure.
Just putting it down.
How many hot dogs do you eat? How many hot dogs or brats do you eat at a Reds game?
The Big Red Smoky.
The Big Red Smoky.
What is that?
It is Cincinnati's version. It's like a hybrid between a brat and a hot dog.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's kind of like the half smoke back in DC.
Sure.
Yeah. Whatever you say.
Does it come with chili and cheese on top?
No, it does not.
That's what the half smoke comes from.
But between conies, brats, and hot dogs, I think I've hit 76 in 2021, especially after last week.
I think Ryan Porth with a bit of a hot take coming back from vacation. Joey Chestnut, not an athlete.
So what we're saying is that we need to enlist Ryan to be in the Nathan's hot dog eating contest.
I think so. I think that's
Start training now, my friend, because you have to qualify.
Yeah.
You don't just show up at Coney Island and eat hot dogs.
I will start training now for the 2025 hot dog eating contest.
That's what you need to do.
Joey Chestnut will probably still be the champion.
He's probably still going strong.
Was Kobayashi in this?
He hasn't been in it in several years.
Retirement.
There
Is
was
he in
also
retirement?
was some controversy, I believe, in terms of,
Was he using spider tack?
He was not using
were
spider
there
tack.
performance enhancers?
He was actually coating his esophagus with Pepto-Bismol so that the hot dogs slid down there faster and he didn't get heartburn.
Is that true?
Indigestion. No.
Okay. All right. Ryan Porth, how was vacation? Welcome back. We missed you last week.
It was good. It was eventful,
I saw you. Did you go to a White Sox game?
I did go to a White Sox game.
There you go.
Yeah. Witnessed a beer snake.
I saw that.
Orchestrate from the ground up in the outfield.
At Porth Game on Twitter.
I think I hit every single piece of major interstate in the state of Illinois between driving to Iowa and then driving to Chicago and then driving from the lake house in Wisconsin back to Nashville yesterday.
Probably so.
Which took every bit of 10 hours. So, yeah, it was a nice week of vacation.
There you go.
10 hours in a car is my limit. I can't go much more
That's
than
it?
that.
10 hours?
Yeah, I just can't be in a car all day or close to half a day.
Well, it was accentuated by the fact that there was this 45-minute delay for nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing.
That tends to happen as well on road trips.
A three-lane road down to one lane, and there was no reason for it.
No reason. Just people doing things on the holiday weekend here. Hope everybody had a great Independence Day and their weekend. The fireworks show in Nashville was fantastic once it finally got underway. And the police had some things to sort out, but once they did, the fireworks show was fantastic here in town. A good weekend of sports as well, including, Adam, the Stanley Cup final. I thought maybe coming to an end last night. Tampa Bay, they take a 3-0 lead on Friday night, and the game goes last night in Game 4 to overtime. Montreal stays alive. Josh Anderson with the game winner in overtime. The Canadiens now alive in the series, going back home to Tampa Bay for Game 5. Tampa Bay with an opportunity to close it out on home ice for their second consecutive Stanley Cup. What have you made of this series so far, and what do you think of the chances for Montreal to continue to extend this series and push it back home for Game 6 at Bell Center as well?
First off, the mayor of Tampa must be thrilled. I don't know if you
she
saw
must be.
this over the weekend, but sort of tongue-in-cheek, but still not so great. The mayor of Tampa said that she would like the Lightning to take it. I think she said take it easy on the Canadiens in Game 4 with the hope that they would come back to Tampa, win in Game 5, and be able to celebrate at home because, of course, last year they won in the bubble and weren't able to celebrate in front of anybody other than themselves. And the Lightning family members were not granted an exemption to cross the border to attend the game in Montreal last night. So if the Lightning would have won, their families would not have been there to celebrate again. But I expected the Canadiens not to get swept. I think we are without a Stanley Cup final sweep since 1998, when the Red Wings swept the Washington Capitals. I thought that the game was over when Shea Weber, of all people, committed a double minor late in the game. The Tampa power play did not score last night, but they had plenty of chances. Nikita Kucherov, especially on the doorstep in the final minutes, off the post. I mean, a perfect play. Carey Price did not stand a chance on that play. Hits the post. Then Josh Anderson, as you mentioned, a great individual effort to start the rush up ice, gets the initial scoring chance, creates a rebound, and then pops it in by diving onto the ice. It was great to see the Canadiens fans in Montreal celebrate their allegedly our 3,500 fans in the building. There are definitely more than that outside.
Look to be a little bit more.
Definitely more than that outside Bell Center. Standing room only in the downtown area of Montreal. But I still think the Lightning are going to win this series. I would not be surprised to see them win tomorrow. It's incredibly hard to come back from a 3-0 deficit in a playoff series in the NHL. I think 4 teams ever have done that, 3 or 4 teams. And last night on the broadcast, it's been since the 1940s that the only other time that a team down 3-0 in the Stanley Cup Final came back to win. So the Lightning are still going to win this series. I think it will happen tomorrow. I think the mayor of Tampa will get her wish.
I do too. I'm glad that Montreal and Shea Weber and company got that win,
especially
in the Stanley Cup Final.
Weber.
But I think all it did was probably delay the inevitable.
Can you imagine if Shea Weber if the Canadians would have lost last night's game with Shea Weber in the penalty box? He would have ripped the door off its hinges on his way out.
Yeah, that would have been a tough one. Probably would have been a little hashtag angry Shea on that one from his time here in Nashville.
When they came back for the overtime period, they showed Shea Weber in the box just stewing.
Yes.
And I was just like, oh, God, they better kill this penalty.
The intensity on that man still very strong.
Could you imagine his post-game press conference?
I don't think there would have been a post-game press conference.
Would have been very illuminating.
Yes.
The post-game press conference for he and Carey Price after they won the Eastern Conference and punched their ticket to the Stanley Cup Final, it felt like a game in December. So it was quite something.
The Sportsnet broadcast had a great clip. They were showing all the Canadians celebrating. They showed Josh Anderson. They showed the bench reaction, and then they showed Carey Price. He was watching, and then when they scored the goal, he just calmly reached for his water bottle and just skated down the ice like nothing had happened.
Still some work to do.
Like it was intermission.
Absolutely.
And I was just like, not even this can get Carey Price excited.
That's right. So we'll see if Montreal can continue to extend this series or whether or not Tampa Bay closes it out in Game 5 coming up tomorrow back home in Florida. I did find it interesting, the scheduling of this, and I get it. It makes sense. But I was rooting for a July 4th Game 4 to see if the American team could close it out in Canada on Independence Day. That didn't happen, though.
Yes.
Scheduling put that off to July 5th. So probably a good call by the NHL on that front.
Yeah, well, they could not have competed with Joey Chestnut.
No,
I'm just saying.
who can?
But the Tampa Bay Lightning, hoping to keep the streak alive for American NHL teams, not since 1993.
That's right.
Has a Canadian team, which was the Canadians. Not since 1993 has a Canadian team won the Stanley Cup. So if the American team would have vanquished the Canadian team in Canada on Independence Day, the story writes itself.
Are we sure that Game 5 is going to happen tomorrow night?
I think
so.
the tropical storm / depression will be gone by the time the game starts.
I was about to say, if it got rescheduled, that'd be the only hurricane to beat the Lightning this postseason.
Oh, I see what you did there.
Good gracious.
It is tropical
He's
storm.
been back for 13 minutes and has already derailed the show.
All I will say to that is
amazing.
that it's tropical storm Elsa, and all I'm telling you, Ryan, is to let it go.
Both of you need to leave immediately. Both of you get out of the door right now. When we come back, some developments last week, huge developments for the Nashville Predators. What does this mean for their future? We'll get Ryan Porth and Adam Vingan's thoughts on that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game, streaming live on Periscope, on YouTube, and on Twitch as well. Taking your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Adam Vingan in today for Joe Rexrode. He'll be in today, tomorrow, and Thursday as well. So lots of Vingan this week. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a good time.
It is a Smash Brothers reunion this week.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Shout out to the Smash Brothers. So
long live the Smash Brothers.
Got that coming for you all week long here on the show. And Adam, last week, a big move made by the Nashville Predators. Victor Arvidsson traded to the Los Angeles Kings, a second-round pick in return for the Predators in this year's draft, a third-round pick for next year as well. What did you think of that move by the Predators and David Poile, the return on it as well? Is that good value for Victor Arvidsson? What did you make of the trade that shook up this Predators lineup and shook up, to a certain degree, this Predators core last week, sending Arvidsson to L.A.?
I thought it was a tidy little piece of business by the Predators to trade Victor Arvidsson, which is something I suggested at the beginning of the offseason that they should do. And I'm not the only one, of course. But it just made sense. Victor Arvidsson had a tremendous career with the Predators. Scored a franchise record 34 goals during the 2018-19 season. When you think about the ascension of the Predators, from the team that was just happy to be there to a Stanley Cup contender. Victor Arvidsson was a huge part of that, but the injuries were clearly catching up to him. He was not the same player. The speed wasn't there. The ability to generate and score off the rush wasn't there. It just felt like he wasn't going to return to the level that made him such an important player for this team, and there was uncertainty within the organization that was going to happen. I think when a player gets traded, a lot of times you have that initial boost when a player gets traded, and they're they want to prove that their former team made a mistake, or they're excited to be on their new team. And I think you might see that from Victor Arvidsson early next season with the Los Angeles Kings, but he's 28, and the Predators just felt like he was in decline, and he wasn't going to return to his previous form with them. So to get a second-round pick this year, which will be a higher second-round pick because the Kings were in the lottery,
right?
And a third-round pick next year, I think that's a good piece of business. I think the Predators, did the right thing. I have a hard time coming up with any criticism of this particular move.
Well, I also thought when you look at it, I would have been shocked if they got through this offseason and this core was left together. Like this core was going to be changed in some way, and you start to look at the pieces that they have in this core, and you and I think, identify the core of this team basically the same way. And at the time, it was Arvidsson, Forsberg, Johansson, Duchesne, with the forward group, and then on defense, you got Yossi, Ekholm, Ellis as well. And that's how you kind of encapsulate what the core is. And now I think obviously UC Saros is becoming a part of that as well.
Yes.
But you start to look around. I mean, I think the first two names people look at would be Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchesne.
Right.
Those at this point I think are untradeable assets. Victor Arvidsson is a tradable asset and was a tradable asset. To your point, I think it made a lot of sense. I don't know that that's going to be the last move that we see David Poile make this offseason. Yeah, and he spoke about that with Darren Donica Chase last week as well. And we'll have some audio coming up from that interview in the next segment. But I just thought it was a move where it just felt like it was time. And Victor Arvidsson the last couple of years has not been the same player. And I know some of the reaction on social media last week when the trade was made was, that's all you can get for Victor Arvidsson? And I saw that reaction especially nationally. I mean, Andrew Berkshire talked about it. That's really not a good return for Victor Arvidsson. And I think on the surface, I understand why their reaction is that way. But if you've watched Victor Arvidsson play the last couple of years, I think there are real concerns about what his future is going to look like, what type of player that he's going to be. And look, this also has the opportunity, if Victor Arvidsson somehow goes and figures it out, he's still only being paid $4.25 million per year for the next 3 years. This could end up being a pretty good bargain for the LA Kings if it works out. But at this point, if you're a Predators fan and you've watched Victor Arvidsson play the last couple of years and you're not at least somewhat concerned by what you've seen, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, this has been a pretty concerning last couple of years for Victor Arvidsson.
And to put that into perspective, I'm looking at my story from the other day, in reaction to the trade, and my friends at SportLogic, a stats company, helped me pull these numbers. So at 5-on-5 in 2018-19, Arvidsson played 58 games out of 82 that season. At 5-on-5, he had 10 rush goals on 53 rush chances. In the past 2 seasons, he played 107 total games. He had 4 rush goals on 53 chances. 53 chances in 107 games.
Yeah.
So, it's clear to me that Arvidsson's speed had diminished. And the LA Kings can take this opportunity, could take a chance on Victor Arvidsson. They had enough draft capital to trade away 2 of their own picks. Because they are, I would say in the later, maybe the middle stages of a rebuild. They have a lot of really good young players. They still have Anze Kopitar, They still have Drew Doughty. To have Victor Arvidsson, a veteran player with significant playoff experience, a former 30-goal scorer, I think that he could be a good influence on some of the younger players, the up-and-comers on the Los Angeles Kings. So I could see why Rob Blake, the GM of the Los Angeles Kings, decided to target Victor Arvidsson. But, I noticed the same thing that you did, Robby, in terms of the national reaction to the trade. A lot of what are the Predators doing if they were going to trade a player and rebuild or reset. This is not the player you should have traded. Quite frankly, of the core players we identified, his contract was the easiest to move.
Yeah.
It still has 3 years, which isn't great, but manageable. And his cap hit, especially in a flat cap world, is quite reasonable. So, it just made too much sense. It really did. And, a lot of fans have been clamoring for years for this core to be broken up. And sure, a lot of fans were sad to see Victor Arvidsson traded because of the reasons I previously explained about how important he has been to this team and how he became such a fan favorite. But, if this team is going to get back to Stanley Cup contender status, I believe it was David Poyle on the Midday Show last week saying that it might require taking a step back before taking a step forward. And I think that, quite frankly, is the right course of action.
Well, and now the question is, what else is going to happen this offseason? We know about the expansion draft, and we'll get more into that coming up throughout the show today. And we know that's going to be the next step, I think, chronologically as well, as to what happens here with the expansion draft with Seattle. But you do have, at this point, I think, a little bit more than $22 million worth of cap space after Victor Arvidsson has been traded. What does that mean for Mikael Granlund? What does that mean for the contract that UC Saros still has left to receive? I don't view this as all of a sudden the Predators are just going to go out there and be big money spenders in free agency. I still think there's a lot of business in-house that they've got to take care of, and I think it's pretty obvious based on not only the move made with Arvidsson, but the comments made at the end of the season by both David Poyle and John Hines. I believe Mikael Granlund, pretty big priority for this Predators organization as they continue to move forward here throughout this offseason.
As he should be.
Yeah.
And you're right. I have Cap Friendly up right now. They have the Predators with $22.8 roughly million in projected cap space after the trade. Mikael Granlund is an unrestricted free agent. Eeli Tolvanen needs a new contract. Matthew Olivier needs a new contract. Dante Fabro needs a new contract. UC Saros needs a new contract. There are a couple of other younger players Rem Pitlick needs a new contract. Tanner Jeannot needs a new contract. Jeremy Davies needs a new contract. And a lot of those younger players aren't going to take up a lot of money.
Sure.
A couple million here and there. I think UC Saros, I could see him signing a shorter term deal somewhere between 3 and 4 million, maybe a little bit more than 4. Perhaps the Predators could just take the money that they freed by trading Victor Arvidsson and allot it to UC Saros. But, I do think Mikael Granlund is a priority. We've talked a lot about, the core players and what has been expected of them. David Poile and John Hynes throughout the season, but especially at the end of the season, were just singing the praises of Mikael Granlund. And I think it would be wise to re-sign him now. You need to be careful and not sign him for too long or for too much. But if you can find, some sort of middle ground, a shorter term deal with a cap hit that rewards Granlund for his pay, would you give Mikael Granlund, I'm just throwing a number out here, a 3-year, $15 million contract?
Yeah, but that's probably the roof. As Michael Jordan says, the ceiling is the roof. That's probably the roof of what I would do.
Porth, would you do that? That's a $5 million cap.
I reluctantly say yes.
Reluctantly?
The third year is what gets me.
Right.
I mean, I would rather do a 2-year, say, $12 million deal than 3-year, $15 million deal.
Okay.
It's a little bit more money, a little less term.
Sure.
Yeah, I think at this point, I think you don't want to overcommit. I mean, his previous contract that he played on before this past season was 3 years long, and he had a cap hit, I believe, of 5.75.
Yep.
Then he took a pay cut this past season, 1 year, $3.75 million contract. So I would expect that number, of course, the 3.75, to go up. Negotiations have not started. I don't think with many players. I think they were going to wait until after the holiday weekend. But, definitely with Mikael Granlund, those discussions have not started in earnest. But I think there's there certainly is a willingness on the part of Mikael Granlund to hear the Predators out. If you recall, last summer, basically, he was going to free agency.
Sure.
Like he was not going to re-sign with the Predators until he went into free agency, and then that, of course, extended until close to Christmas when he re-signed. But I do think it's important. Mikael Granlund sort of embodies the attitude that the Predators want out of their players. And, he's also, of course, a veteran, close to 30 years old, who can set a good example for the younger players. So, I do think it should be a priority. I don't like both of you have said, I would be cautious of going too long or paying too much. But if you can find a shorter term deal that rewards him, that also doesn't hamstring you in future years, I think you should go for it.
So did the trade of Victor Arvidsson signal maybe a concerning trend inside this Predators locker room? We'll get to that coming up next. Adam Vingan in today for Joe Rexrode. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Adam Vinkin, Ryan Porth here with you today on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee, talking Predators and the Victor Arvidsson trade. Ryan Porth back from vacation this week. You have not been in since Victor Arvidsson was traded. What were your thoughts on Arvidsson to the LA Kings? Were you surprised that it happened? Were you surprised that it happened this early? Your reaction to the Victor Arvidsson trade?
Not necessarily surprised. You know, Adam Vinkin came on one of the Preds Insider shows immediately following the season. I asked him what is the number one priority for David Poile this offseason, and I was a little surprised at Adam's response, which was figuring out the future of Victor Arvidsson, and that was the first thing that David Poile did on his offseason checklist. So good job by you.
Way to go, Adam.
One Adam Vinkin.
Sometimes I know what I'm talking about.
Sometimes.
Only sometimes.
I was pleasantly surprised with the return. I was expecting more like a second and fourth or fifth for Victor with the way he has played in the last two seasons. I think a lot of the national reaction is based off what he did 2 years ago and not based on what those national pundits would have seen from Victor Arvidsson in the last 2 years. And it's one thing to have an off season, but when you have two consecutive off seasons, that's not a good trend.
Yeah.
So the fact that Poile got a couple of solid assets in return for Victor Arvidsson and cleared more than $4 million off the books, I would say the timing was right on this for David Poile to pull the trigger on a trade, and hopefully they can parlay those picks into another Victor Arvidsson or another player that can be beneficial to this team down the road.
Well, and it was interesting. You brought up David Poile, and he was on last week with Darren Donick and Chase immediately following the Victor Arvidsson trade, and had some interesting comments about how the trade came about and maybe what Victor Arvidsson's feelings were when the trade took place. Here's what Nashville Predators general manager David Poile had to say last week on Darren Donick and Chase.
Victor's year this year was okay. Pretty strong. First half, maybe not as good as the second half. The playoffs didn't go our way or his way. As he didn't play in all the games, and he wasn't 100% healthy. At our end of the year meeting, he was not happy with where he was at. I think it's fair to say we weren't happy. In my conversation with him today, I think we both acknowledged that, and I believe Victor is very appreciative and thankful for everything that's happened here in Nashville, and I think he needs a fresh start. And I can't speak for him, but if you do speak with him, I think he's okay with this. It just he needed something different, and this happens from time to time in sports, and where you see players get rejuvenated and maybe better. Maybe it's a better spot for him. I don't know. It just felt in talking to him, and I think he would acknowledge this, that it just didn't think it was going to work here anymore for a variety of reasons.
So that was David Poile last week on with Darren Donick and Chase. And Adam, I found those comments very interesting. I don't think necessarily surprising, because if you're Victor Arvidsson, I don't know how you could really be happy with the last couple of years based on the previous track record that you had. I mean, the 3 years that we're really talking about here with the window of Victor Arvidsson being a really, really good player for this Predators team. 31 goals, 29 goals, 34 goals, and it just hasn't been quite the same since then. But what did you think of those comments from David Poile about maybe Victor Arvidsson was okay with this? He wanted a fresh start. Predators wanted a fresh start as well, and maybe both sides were ready for this, ready to move on and go in different directions.
I mean, those comments certainly raised eyebrows, and I did a little reporting over the holiday weekend. I exchanged messages with Victor Arvidsson's agent, Kurt Overhart, who represents, among others, Ryan Johansson and Matthias Ekholm, and asked Kurt if Victor, or Kurt on Victor's behalf, requested a trade, made a formal request for a trade. And Kurt said no. There was never a formal trade request made. I know that Elliot Freeman said on the midday show on the same day as the trade that he had heard that Arvidsson wanted out. But when when I think about the trade, I also think about the reaction from inside the dressing room. We saw Philip Forsberg just post a big thumbs down emoji on an Instagram story shortly after the trade happened. Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene posted Instagram. I guess, well, they made Instagram posts. I don't know. I'm not big on Instagram. I have an Instagram, but I don't post a lot on Instagram. But I saw
Gotta get with the times.
I know. I saw, Instagram posts from both Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene, wishing Arvidsson well. And certainly I feel like it left some fans wondering if there was growing tension between the highest paid forwards on the team, Philip Forsberg, Ryan Johansson, and Matt Duchene, and John Hines. And I think it's important to establish something. No coach is universally beloved by his players in any sport.
Sure.
I mean, we all have great jobs. We're not always 100% satisfied with our jobs. I find it very hard. I would find it very difficult to find somebody who is 100% satisfied with their job on a regular basis. So, certainly, do those reactions from Duchene and Johansson and Forsberg, do they suggest anything more than the fact that, their longtime teammate and close friend is leaving? Probably not. I don't read too much into that. But at the same time, they, being the entire team, not just those three players, they bear responsibility for this trade. Some responsibility for this trade. How many times did this group expect to be able to get chance after chance to compete and not win a Stanley Cup before they were broken up? I did not articulate that very well, but you know what I'm saying.
Sure.
How many times? I mean, if anything, David Poile gave them too many chances, and so, this is not to say that the proverbial blood of Victor Arvidsson is on their hands, but they did play a part in this because they did not get the job done, and a team can only get so many chances before the GM has to do something about it. So, a lot of these players, quite frankly, have to look in the mirror and realize that this is really the first time I feel like this core group has been put on notice, because a lot of time we've talked about how the Predators need more from their top players. Sure, I mean that is not in dispute, but none of this. There haven't really been that many big changes. I mean, other than PK Subban being traded a couple of summers ago, but he was here for a short time. I just think that this is the first time that a lot of these players are feeling the pressure, knowing that no one is ever safe except for Roman Josi, who has his full no movement clause.
Sure.
But now it's real. I mean, Victor Arvidsson is gone, and other players in Victor's position, on the team, need to look at themselves a little bit.
Well, I thought Gentry Estes from the Tennessean, our friend that comes on the show quite regularly, had an interesting piece over the weekend, and the title of it was, "If Victor Arvidsson wasn't happy, which other Nashville Predators might not be?" And that's an interesting question. I don't know. I didn't come away from the Victor Arvidsson trade thinking to myself that signals like this tidal wave of just players in that room being unhappy. Now, you brought up the reaction. I can tell you, with some conversations that I've had, there's some players not very happy with this trade, and you wouldn't expect them to be. It's one of their good friends. They've moved on, and look, this happens in professional sports. So you understand that part of it. But I said this on Twitter right after the Arvidsson trade happened. Like, if you're a member of that core group, if you're Philip Forsberg, if you're Ryan Ellis, Matt Duchene, Ryan Johansson, and you didn't expect like something like this to happen this offseason, I don't really know what you're paying attention to, what you're watching. I mean, to your point, I think David Poile has probably left this group together a little bit too long, and I would have been shocked if they got through this offseason and this core group came back. So, I don't know. I hear those comments from Poile on with Darren Donick and Chase, and when you try to piece it all together, I think it makes sense why Victor Arvidsson wouldn't be happy. I think it makes sense certainly why the Predators were not happy with Arvidsson and his production, or lack thereof, over the course of the last couple of years. I did not come away from it thinking that this signals some big internal problem inside that locker room.
I didn't either, and I think one thing that has been abundantly clear since John Hines became coach of the Predators is that a player's salary does not grant him immunity. And think about Game 3 of the playoff series against the Hurricanes. The most attention-grabbing personnel decision that John made was removing Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene off the power play.
Yep.
And the power play in those 2 games in Raleigh was a mess. I can't remember if it was game 1 or 2 where the Hurricanes had better chances shorthanded than the Predators did on the power play. But the power play was a mess. John went with players that he felt were playing better than Ryan and Matt. And you know what? It did work. I thought the power play after that was made, I mean, it didn't score a ton, but it looked a lot more cohesive than it did previously. And it seemed to light a fire under Ryan and Matt. Ryan had a great series, I thought, for the most part. And Matt, of course, scored the double overtime winner in Game 3. But think about Victor Arvidsson. He perhaps he felt underutilized when he was in the lineup, and his ice time wouldn't suggest that. He was 5th among forwards in ice time per game this past season, which was more than he had. His ice time this season was more than it was last season per game. But his status as a go-to guy had diminished. And that's because when he was in the lineup, he wasn't producing at the same rate that he was previously. And there were other players on the team that were doing a better job of producing and driving offense. So, just because Victor Arvidsson has a couple of 30-goal seasons on his resume doesn't mean he is above, being sidelined, so to speak, for other players who are playing better than he is. And that's the same thing with Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene and other players as well, that when other players are playing well, those are the players that John Hines is playing. Just because Matt Duchene and Ryan Johansson make $8 million a year does not mean that they're going to get more opportunities than other players just because of their salaries. So I think Victor Arvidsson, of course, is responsible for this too. When he was healthy, or in the lineup rather, he was not producing at the same rate. So why, it made sense to me that, John Hines was starting to rely on other players because Victor wasn't giving him the production that they expected.
We'll continue this conversation when we come back. Got a lot of your thoughts to get to as well on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025, including a great question from Weston in Columbia, Tennessee. We'll get to that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game, streaming live on YouTube, on Periscope, and on Twitch as well. Adam Vingan in today for Joe Rexrode, who is on vacation out in California. Right now, talking Predators, taking your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Weston in Columbia, Tennessee, texting in. Do you think another big move like the Arvidsson trade will be made during this offseason, losing a player due to the expansion draft not being taken into account as the next big move? So do you think maybe this could signal a busy offseason for David Poile and the Nashville Predators? Could we see some more trades take place this offseason? What do you think, Adam?
I would not discount the possibility. As Weston said, the expansion draft is off limits in this discussion. But a player of some importance is going to be taken away from this team in a couple of weeks. And I am curious to see who that player is. The expansion lists, by the way, are due to the NHL in 11 days, July 17th. So the Predators are coming up here on that deadline. I think it's important, not to, I don't think this team, at least right now, needs a full-scale rebuild. I do think it's important, however, that the team continues to give younger players an opportunity. And by trading Victor Arvidsson, that creates an opening, whether it's Eeli Tolvanen continuing to get more ice time, whether that means Philip Tomasino could make this team and play in the top 6, which would be exciting. I look around the rest of the core, and as you said, Robby, I have a hard time imagining Matt Duchene and Ryan Johansson going somewhere without the Predators coming up on the losing end of that deal, because you're not going to win that. You're not going to win that trade if that happens.
Sure.
David Poile has said that he would like to re-sign Mattias Ekholm and Philip Forsberg. Remember, after the trade deadline, David Poile was asked about, the rampant Mattias Ekholm rumors and the fact that he had not been traded and how that would affect expansion. And David Poile said, and I quote, "I'm not losing Mattias Ekholm in expansion."
He's pretty strong about it.
So, I think initially a lot of us took that as, well, he's not going anywhere. He's going to be protected. They're going to re-sign him. And then some fans and some readers over at The Athletic were like, well, it could mean that he's trading Mattias Ekholm. So technically he still wouldn't be losing him in expansion. But I
feel like they're going to do that, though. Why not do it last year before the deadline when his value is higher?
Yeah.
I mean, you got 1 year left on his deal at this point.
Right. I mean, if the Predators would have traded Mattias Ekholm at the trade deadline in April, the acquiring team would have gotten Mattias Ekholm for 2 playoff runs instead of 1, and that's incredibly important.
And you could have got a huge haul for that.
Oh, for sure. I can only imagine. I mean, the reports were a first-round pick, a prospect, a high-level prospect, and another piece. The Predators certainly would have cashed in on a Mattias Ekholm trade. Remember, over at The Athletic, we had our NHL trade deadline big board, and the first edition of that, Mattias Ekholm was number 1.
That's right.
On our list. I mean, his name was definitely out there. So, there are a lot of Predators fans that would like to see the team move on from Ryan Ellis. Again, I have a hard time imagining that. The Predators love them some Ryan Ellis. And Ryan Ellis, love him or hate him, he does have value. I mean, he
Sure.
is incredibly well respected around the NHL. And a lot of teams would love to have Ryan Ellis as a top pairing right-handed defenseman on their team. But, I don't think the Predators are going to move on from him. So what does that mean? I agree with you. I think, there could be more moves made. I'm not sure any of them are going to be as seismic as the Victor Arvidsson trade, but I would not be surprised to see another move made of some kind involving a player of some importance.
Christopher on Periscope asked, I think the elephant in the room remains, can Duchesne or Johansson be moved? I think if that's going to happen, it's going to happen at the expansion draft. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, Adam, I look at it this way. Like if you're David Poile, that would be the ideal scenario, is to rid yourself, in my opinion, that's the ideal scenario, to rid yourself of one of those contracts, and preferably Matt Duchesne if you had to pick. I just think if you're David Poile, though, in order to make that happen, you're going to have to give up a lot. And I think there's a line in the sand you've got to draw if you're David Poile and the Predators. Like, I'm not comfortable giving up, Dante Fabro and a pick along with Matt Duchesne just to get Matt Duchesne out of here. I mean, if you're giving up Dante Fabro and a second-round pick, that's a pretty high price. Now, maybe you're a Predators fan and you are comfortable with that, and you're comfortable giving up whatever it takes to rid yourself of that $8 million contract per year, which has 5 more years left on it if you're Matt Duchesne. But I look at the expansion draft coming up, and I still find it to be pretty unlikely that either Matt Duchesne or Ryan Johansson is going to get selected at that point, based on just the math involved with it. I mean, that's a lot of money for Seattle to come in and take for players that have not been productive.
Would it be Fabro on a pick or just Fabro?
Could be just Fabro.
I agree. I agree with you, Robby, that there comes a point where doing everything you can to get rid of those contracts, it's going to reach a point where you don't want to. You're going to lose that deal no matter what, but you don't want to lose it, and face plant at the same time. Right. Is it worth trading? Is it worth trading Dante Fabro or someone like Rem Pitlick, for example, or a high draft pick, or some combination of those things, just to get rid of one of those two $8 million players? I think I'm not sure. I just think that, look, the Ryan Johansson contract to me was not a mistake, because at the time they needed to sign him to that contract.
Agreed.
He was coming off of an incredible playoff performance before he suffered a freak injury in the Western Conference Final. They weren't going to let him go. They traded Seth Jones for him a couple of years earlier. It made you could live with that. Like when the contract was signed, I don't think there were a ton of people who were upset with the Ryan Johansson deal. I think it made sense at the time. Has it aged well? No, it hasn't. But I don't think at the time people were up in arms about it.
No.
It's the Matt Duchesne contract that gets me. It never made sense to pay him that much money. He's just not an $8 million player. And, to me, the difference is Ryan Johansson, seems to have bought into John Hines' vision. Matt Duchesne has been much slower to embrace it.
Yep. And
I just think that, Matt Duchesne has earned a reputation in his 10 plus years in the league of being a player that, is not, if you're expecting Matt Duchesne to be, the star of a championship team, that's not who he is. And I just think that if the Predators can find a way to get out of that contract, they should. But I don't think they should go overboard in order to do it. To Ryan's point, it's like, what does overboard entail?
Right.
Is it one piece? Is it two pieces? Are you retaining salary? It's a good conversation to have, but I just don't think they should, basically give a team whatever they want just to get rid of Matt Duchesne.
We'll continue this conversation throughout the show today, taking your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. When we come back, the Titans are getting a lot of love right now, but there's a notable omission in terms of a free agent signing that they made this offseason. Not getting a whole lot of love out there. We'll get to that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode live from the Wholesaling Studios, powered by RumbleOn.com here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, hour number 2 of Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Adam Vingan in today for Joe Rexrode. Joe is on vacation. Ryan Porth as well has come back from vacation here on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Taking your thoughts all show long on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. And, guys, I was kind of looking around yesterday, just seeing what I missed over the weekend. I unplugged a little bit over the weekend and got away from the phone. It was good. I recommend it very often if you don't do that often enough out there. But I saw this list that ESPN came out with, and I think Jeremy Fowler was the author of this piece, and it was listing the top 10 edge rushers for 2021 heading into this season. And he got some input from executives and coaches and players around the league. And as we know, Bud Dupree, big free agent signing for the Tennessee Titans. He's getting paid over $16 million per year coming in to try and fix an abysmal pass rush for the Titans. And you go up and down this list, it's headlined by Myles Garrett, the number 1 player at the edge rush position on this list on ESPN. Bud Dupree, not on this list. You got TJ Watt, his former teammate, number 2 with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Joey Bosa coming in, Khalil Mack, of course, as well. Chandler Jones, Von Miller at number 6, which I found interesting, given the fact that Von Miller did not play at all last year, and he's a little bit up there now. But coming in at number 6, Von Miller, Chase Young at 7, Nick Bosa at 8, Cameron Jordan at 9 your beloved New Orleans Saints.
Elijah isn't here, so I'm representing the Saints fandom today.
That's true. And Daniil Hunter coming in at number 10. No love for Bud Dupree. Now, he did get
he was an honorable mention.
And did receive some votes. But Bud Dupree not in the top 10 in terms of the edge rushers for the NFL. So you look at his salary, he's certainly being paid like a top 10 edge rusher. What do we think the bar needs to be for Bud Dupree this year? He was having a great season last year with the Pittsburgh Steelers before his injury, where he tore his ACL, and 8 sacks last year in 11 games. He's come in to be a huge difference maker for this Titans defense. Where do we think the line needs to be? What would you consider to be a successful season for Bud Dupree coming in year one with this Titans pass rush?
Well, how many sacks as a team did the Titans have last season?
2.
I believe the number was 19.
Okay, so Bud Dupree had almost half of that on his own. So that's a good start. I found this article, as you know, I love advanced statistics.
You do.
And I do enjoy, though I do not cover the NFL, I do enjoy next-gen stats. I do like that the NFL has next-gen stats. And I found a story from earlier this offseason from NFL.com, the top 10 disruptors of the 2020 season. And Bud Dupree was number 5 on that list. And I found this to be interesting. In the 12 games, this is from the reporter, quote, in the 12 games Dupree played in, TJ Watt, I'm going to say JJ Watt, TJ Watt recorded a 19% pressure rate. With Dupree out, Watt's pressure rate fell to less than 10%, underscoring Dupree's importance to the defense. So even when Bud Dupree wasn't the one sacking the quarterback, just having him on the field provided opportunities for TJ Watt and the rest of the Steelers' defensive line to get to the quarterback.
Yep.
So the bar is low. At this time last year, we were talking about Vic Beasley. We were talking about Jadeveon Clowney, and whether or not they would provide the necessary defensive pressure for the Tennessee Titans. I think the answer was a resounding no, as Porth will be quick to point out, or anybody would be quick to point out, but especially Porth. So
he's been very passionate.
He has been very passionate about it. So I think, I don't know if 8 sacks. I don't know if 8 sacks. Of course, if he could get 8 sacks again, that would be great. I don't know. I think somewhere in the 6 to 8 sack range, especially if other players on the team can also pull their weight a little bit more.
I think it needs to be higher. Well, number one, I'm interested to see how quickly he can come back and look like Bud Dupree. He's posted, and there have been some videos out there of him working out. He looks good. He's running around out there, mobility-wise, coming off the torn ACL. He looks like he's going to be in good shape heading into training camp. I would guess that the Titans, just based on Mike Vrabel's history, they're probably pretty cautious with him in training camp. My guess is you're probably not going to see Bud Dupree play in any of these preseason games, which I have no problem with. I don't need to see Bud Dupree play in a preseason game. I do think the bar needs to be a little higher, though. I think, and you're right, Bud Dupree is more than just a sacker of the quarterback. He's really good in the running game. He is a great disruptor at the line of scrimmage. And all those things are good, but you don't really have a TJ Watt on the other side either. I think he could help Harold Landry, and I expect Harold Landry to have a good season for this Titans team and hopefully play a little less snaps than the 95% of the snaps that he played a year ago. But I think when you're getting paid that much money, I need to see double-digit sacks out of Bud Dupree. To me, that's the bar heading into the season if you're the Titans. And maybe that's unfair. I'm sure there's some Titans fans out there that will say, well, just assigning a sack total is unfair for Bud Dupree. How does he affect the defense? And I get all that. But I think when you're getting paid that much, I need to see double-digit sacks out of you if you're Bud Dupree. And it's been a while since the Titans have been able to do that.
Well, we heard a lot from TD and even Joe as well about Jadeveon Clowney, correct me if I'm wrong, that even though he is not a player that has collected sacks in his career, just his presence on the field, was enough to get other players to the quarterback.
Right.
Just like we were talking about with Bud Dupree last year with the Pittsburgh Steelers, but we didn't even really see that last year out of Jadeveon Clowney. But I'm looking at Bud Dupree's numbers. He had 8 sacks last year. He had 11.5 the previous year in the 2019 season with the Pittsburgh Steelers, 5.5 the year before that. So he can get to double-digit sacks.
Sure.
Perhaps I could, revise my previous projection. I mean, I think 10 should be within the realm of possibility. You have to imagine that, the Titans understand that, their lack of sacking and pressures on the quarterback, is a weakness of theirs.
I mean, there's no way it can be as bad as last year, right?
You would think that.
There's no way, right?
How long have we been saying about that, about the Predators' power play?
That's a good question.
We've been saying the Predators' power play can't be much worse than this, right? And every year they seem to find a new low. But, at one point last year, speaking of the Predators' power play, I think that the Predators' power play was actually better than the Titans' third down defense. But,
Yeah.
But I think, when we were just talking about this with Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene, that when you're paid a lot of money, a lot is expected of you, and Bud Dupree was a premier free agent signing for the Tennessee Titans this offseason because they understand that they need to do better at pressuring off opposing quarterbacks. So, I think with a player coming off of a knee injury, I would agree that I'm sure Titans fans won't see a ton of Bud Dupree during the preseason, but if he's 100% or close to 100% in week 1, I said 6 to 8. Let's go 8 to 10. I think 8 to 10 should be within the realm of possibility.
I think the number depends on how soon he's healthy. Overall, the front 7 better be better because of him.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Like, if he knocks on the door of 10 and he doesn't quite reach double digit, but Harold Landry gets more sacks, and Autry and Simmons up front are effective consistently throughout the season and not, the tale of two halves that Jeffrey Simmons had last season on the D-line. If they accomplish that with the Dupree signing, then at least for 2021, I think it was worth it.
Is there anybody on this list? Because I just went through it. I mean, you got Von Miller on there, Chandler Jones as well, who, when he's been on the field, has been very good. Is there anybody on this list that you think shouldn't be there? Maybe Bud Dupree should be in place of. I mean, Chase Young is at number 7 on this list. You do this list this time next year and he stays healthy, he's probably going to be number 2, number 3. Like, he's going to continue to move up. I'm interested to see what Von Miller he's got left in the tank, because I understand that he's been great throughout his career. An injury like that, he's 32. Same thing with Chandler Jones. You just tore your bicep. You're 31. I'm interested to see. I don't know if I would buy both of those being in the top 6 in pass rushers in the league.
I was more surprised that Shaq Barrett was not in the top 10 than Bud Dupree.
I agree.
I think Von Miller was the one that surprised me just because, as you said, he didn't play last year. And, he is an older player coming off of ankle surgery. So we'll see. We'll see, how he holds up. We know, of course, like most athletes, takes very good care of himself. But, when you miss an entire season, I'm not sure you should get the benefit of the doubt, even though Von Miller at his peak was incredible. But I think, perhaps he should have been in the honorable mentions list as we'll wait and see if he can return to form now that he's back. But like missing a whole season, although Von Miller, is a brand name player, I would not have had him in my top 10. Honestly, I probably would have been like, oh yeah, Von Miller, like that's right, he didn't play last year. Although I don't watch the NFL as closely as the people that were interviewed for this story, I would not have had him in my top 10.
I would have had Shaq Barrett in there, and it was interesting. I was looking at this list, and one of the most amazing things that I found, Cameron Jordan, he's played every game of his career.
That guy,
16 games per year since 2011.
That guy does not get hurt.
It's unbelievable.
That guy does not get hurt. And, the Saints defense, I would know, has been up and down over the years. There was a time where they were setting records as the worst defense in the history of the NFL. And now that they don't have Drew Brees anymore, not to say that their offense still cannot be, still won't be dynamic with Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas. But, with Drew Brees no longer there, you would expect, perhaps the offense to to diminish a bit, they're going to need that defense to be even better. And Cameron Jordan has been the anchor of that defense since he came into the league. But yeah, I mean, considering the injuries that pile up in the NFL in general, the fact that he plays a premier position and hasn't missed a game is pretty remarkable.
So Bud Dupree, obviously a huge move for the Titans on defense. Could there be more moves coming on that side of the ball? While there's one really interesting name out there that could be a possibility for the Titans. We'll get to that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. ESPN 94.9 is the official English radio home of the Nashville Soccer Club. Listen in Thursday night as Nashville SC takes on Atlanta at Nissan Stadium. Pregame starts at 7:15 and the match begins at 7:30. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Adam Vingan in today for Joe, who is on vacation. Right now, talking Titans, taking your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. And we've talked about Bud Dupree and the big move made by the Titans on the defensive side of the ball this offseason. Could there be another move coming on the defensive side of the ball? And Bleacher Report came out with an interesting article talking about what every team in the NFL needs to do before the 2021 NFL season begins. One move that needs to be made, and the move that the Bleacher Report article had for the Titans was signing Richard Sherman. Now, as we know, Richard Sherman, a longtime member of the Seattle Seahawks, the Legion of Boom, and he's bounced around a little bit there since then, going to the 49ers as well. He is a little bit older now. He's up there in age, 33. So you already have a 33-year-old in your secondary with Janoris Jenkins coming in. But Richard Sherman, the move Bleacher Report has for the Titans, and Richard Sherman already making some comments earlier this offseason about wanting to go to a contender, saying, quote, I want to get to a team that's competing for a championship, so that's what I'm focused on and waiting for the right opportunity. When it comes, that's where I'll be. I would figure that the Titans, with the moves that they've made, with the offense that they have, qualify as a team that's competing for a championship. What do you guys think of the idea of Richard Sherman maybe being someone that the Titans should have their eye on this offseason when it comes to the secondary?
Well, let's go through the Titans' cornerback depth chart right now. So they've got Caleb Farley.
Yep.
And
who knows if he'll be able to play.
Who knows if he'll be able to play. You have Christian Fulton. You have Breon Borders. You have Janoris Jenkins, as you mentioned. Played for the Saints last year. I have to add that, of course.
That's right.
And then you have Elijah Molden. Those are your top cornerbacks. And Richard Sherman is definitely not the player he was in the Legion of Boom era when he gave that incredible promo to Aaron Andrews.
Yes.
After was at the NFC Championship game against the
Michael
49ers.
Crabtree, yeah.
Michael Crabtree. God, go back and watch that.
That's awesome.
That's a trip down memory lane. Trip down memory lane. Easy for me to say, but I still think that even at an advanced age in football terms, he's in his early 30s, as am I. So he's a lot better shape than I am, and more of an athlete than I could ever be. And he missed a lot of games last year. But I still think he can be effective, and I know this is such a cliche in sports, but I do think that teams covet players who have championship or extensive playoff experience. And I think for a team that is looking to take that step and become a Super Bowl team, I think Richard Sherman could be an incredible resource for the younger players in that cornerback room. Like I said, you're not going to get the Richard Sherman from, when was the Legion of Boom? Close to 10. Was that close to 10 years ago at this point?
It's about 7 or 8.
Yeah. Six, 7, 8.
You're not getting that. You're not getting that Richard Sherman. But I feel like even a diminished Richard Sherman is still an effective cornerback at the NFL level.
Our buddy Hibbs on Twitter says, hey, at R. Stanley NHL, let's chill on calling someone who is 33 up there in age. Signed somewhere older than that.
I am 32.
Love you, Hibbs.
I am 32, Hibbs. So, like I said.
You're a happy old man, Hibbs. We appreciate you.
Yes, hearing someone is in their mid-30s and is old. I mean, that's the problem with being a professional athlete. It's like, for most people, being in your early 30s or your late 20s. You're just starting the prime of your life.
Yeah.
But if you're an athlete, you're on the downturn. There's nowhere to go but down if you're a late 20s, early 30s athlete, unless you're like Jaromir Jagr.
I just wonder what the price
Brady.
tag would look like for Richard Sherman at this point. I don't necessarily hate the idea of him coming in, as you said. He's not the same guy. I still think he's a pretty good player. And
yeah,
I look at this secondary right now, and outside of Janoris Jenkins in the cornerback room, there's not much experience there at all.
No.
You've got Caleb Farley that's never played an NFL game and has only played the position for basically a year at Virginia Tech and has not played football since 2019.
right.
Elijah Molden coming in. Christian Fulton's in his second year, but we don't really know what he is at this point. He played 6 games last year and had injury problems throughout the season. So I think there's room to be had for some veteran guys to come in and add to that room. You can say what you want about Kevin Johnson, and look, I agree. He was not a good player, and I didn't think that, if he saw significant playing time for this Titans defense, it's probably not a very good sign for the defense. Mm-hmm. But at least he was a veteran. Like, at least, he was in Houston with Vrabel. He knew what the defense was. He knew the terminology. There's a lot of young guys in this secondary, a lot of young guys.
Right.
And I think, look, if that works out well and they stay healthy, I think that could work out okay, because I think you feel good about him being able to run. Like, Christian Fulton can run. Caleb Farley, when he's healthy, certainly can run. So the speed element is there, and that's a question with Richard Sherman at this point. But depending on the price, I don't think it's a bad idea to entertain the thought of bringing him in, just based on how young that room's going to be this year.
I don't think Richard Sherman is Jonathan Joseph.
I don't think so either.
I don't think Richard Sherman would come here and look washed and after a couple of games. And Jonathan Joseph retired, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
He clearly
I think he retired
knew.
before last year. Nobody told him.
Right. But he still was able to get a couple more paychecks before he retired, which is the American dream. Put in a little work, get paid a lot, and then retire.
That's right.
But like we said, like Richard Sherman. I mean, I don't think it's a stretch to say that Richard Sherman's going to be in the Hall of Fame when his career is over, right?
He very well could
Porth,
be.
is Richard Sherman a Hall of Famer?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think Richard Sherman is a Hall of Fame talent, and you're not signing Richard Sherman, to chase down the other team's fastest wide receivers, but he's incredibly intelligent, and when a player gets older and his body slows, the mind tends to stay sharp. And, Richard Sherman, definitely still has a mind for the game. And like you said, when you look at the youth and the question marks in general in the Titans cornerback depth chart, why not? I mean, you were looking, we had the same conversation, when the Julio Jones rumors started picking up. You have A.J. Brown, who's on his way to becoming a star if he's not already a star in the NFL. But after that, I mean, you had Josh Reynolds, and he could be he's a solid receiver, but he's not probably not really a number 2, which he would have been if not for this trade. But then you had Julio Jones, and yes, he was coming off injury too, but he's also a Hall of Famer and an incredible, at the height of his career, was the best receiver in the NFL. And an argument could be made that at the height of his career, Richard Sherman was among the best cornerbacks in the NFL. So I think I don't see, like, the contract, of course, we were talking about this before with Mikhail Granlund for the Predators, but I think, the contract and NFL contracts are so weird. Like, I'm used to covering NHL contracts, which are pretty straightforward. NFL contracts are so incredibly interesting.
They're more like suggestions.
Yeah, they're more like, I mean, you can restructure them. There's guaranteed money. There's signing bonuses. You can cut a guy whenever you want, basically. Are you going to pay a ton for Richard Sherman? You shouldn't. But, I mean, what would be a reasonable contract for Richard Sherman at this stage of his career?
I don't know. Like,
the Titans cap situation.
I was thinking about this yesterday. Like, at this point, I'm not going over $5 million for him, probably.
Yeah.
Like, and I think
I was reading.
Ideally,
an ESPN
go
article.
a little bit less than that.
Yeah.
But if I wouldn't go really $1 over $5 million for him at this point. Now, is that going to be enough? I don't know. I mean, that depends, and I'm interested to see as we get closer to training camp here, what's the market for Richard Sherman going to look like if that's what he wants to do, and go to a competing team, and that's where he's kind of limiting his options. I don't know what's the option. What's the financials of that going to look like at this point?
Well, what is the willingness from Richard Sherman to go into a defensive back room and not be the star?
Yeah,
I mean, Richard Sherman, wherever he's gone, has been the guy, whether it's Seattle or San Francisco.
What's the cornerback situation in San Francisco? Like, was he their top cornerback last year, or since he's been there?
I believe so.
He was.
Yeah.
Okay.
So is he willing to come in and, let's say Caleb Farley's healthy and it's Farley and Jenkins on the outside, is Sherman willing to not play more than 50% of the snaps? If he's not, and if he's going to come in and complain about playing time, I don't think I would bring him in.
It doesn't seem like I mean, I don't know Richard Sherman, but I would think that where he is at the stage of his career, I don't see him as a guy creating a rift because he's not getting a ton of playing time.
We'll continue this conversation on the other side, taking your thoughts on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025, including a very good question from Matt in Gallatin that we'll get to regarding Richard Sherman coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025 The Game. Go to theGameNashville.com to check out Nashville's best deals. Deals happening now include a $50 Bad Axe Throwing Nashville gift card for only $25. Buy one, get one free for Beach Bend Park and Splash Lagoon. Get yours now while they last at theGameNashville.com. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game, streaming live on Periscope, on YouTube, and on Twitch as well. Talking Titans. Should the Titans entertain the possibility of signing Richard Sherman, bringing him in to the secondary? That's thrown out there by an article on Bleacher Report as the move the Titans should make before 2021's training camp rolls around. Let's go to our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Matt in Gallatin texting in, would you rather have Richard Sherman or Zach Ertz? What do you think of that? Zach Ertz rumored to be available. Philadelphia would like to trade him rather than outright cutting him. We've talked a lot about Zach Ertz here on the show and whether or not the Titans would be able to make that work. Now, as they currently sit, the Titans have a little bit more than $8 million worth of cap space, according to overthecap.com. So I think around $8.3 million worth of cap space. Would you rather have Richard Sherman? Would you rather have Zach Ertz? Adam, we'll start with you. You look at this offense, it's already loaded. Got a lot of good pieces, obviously, with Julio Jones coming into the fold as well. Would you rather, if you're a Titans fan, see them add to the secondary and bring in a guy like Richard Sherman? Or would you rather see them continue to load up offensively and add yet another weapon with Zach Ertz at the tight end position?
That's a good question. Well, first of all, the last time the Titans and Eagles swung a trade, it worked out quite well for the Titans when they acquired Dennis Kelly.
Sure did.
And traded Dorial Green-Beckham to the Eagles. So perhaps that magic could be worked again by John Robinson. But you know, I look at the offense. You have Derrick Henry, you have A.J. Brown, you have Julio Jones, you have Josh Reynolds. You know, is Anthony Firkser a starting caliber NFL tight end? Probably not. But I think there are more question marks in the secondary for the Titans than there are on offense. So for me, I would rather the Titans go after Richard Sherman or somebody to strengthen the secondary. Although Zach Ertz would be a great addition, you know, it would be more of a luxury, I feel like, considering the moves that the Titans have already made on the offensive side and the the holy trinity of Henry, Brown, and Jones. I'm not really like realistically, you know, Zach Ertz is not, you know, the player he once was, but at the, you know, I think a lot about football through the prism of fantasy football, because you think, you know, you're looking at production. You want players that can be productive. And Zach Ertz, you know, a couple of years ago was a top tight end in fantasy football.
Sure.
And when you think about tight ends in fantasy football, you think, you know, like when you're drafting a fantasy football team, you know, I would say there are two tight ends that you would be willing to take in an early round: Travis Kelce and George Kittle. And after that, all of the tight ends are kind of the same. Now, Zach Ertz would be an upgrade over Anthony Firkser, but you know, with the other weapons that Ryan Tannehill has, you know, you don't really need Anthony Firkser to be, you know, a top tight end necessarily. So I would go with Richard Sherman. That's my long-winded way of saying Richard Sherman.
Ryan Porth, Richard Sherman or Zach Ertz? Which would you rather see added to the Titans if you're a Titans fan?
Let me flip around the question a little bit. Which of the two players do you feel like would be more likely to get back to their top form
I would
for one
say Zach
season?
Ertz.
Zach Ertz, yeah.
That's my answer.
Just continue to load up offensively.
Yes.
I mean, look.
He took a lot shorter to make that than I did.
Well, I think it's an interesting question because, look, if you leave this offense alone right now, it's going to be a good offense. Unless
it was a good offense last year.
Yeah, I mean, unless Todd Downing comes in and totally screws it up, or, you know, injuries that we can't sit here and predict right now happen, this offense is going to be good. I still have a lot of questions defensively and in this secondary. I like what they've done. I like the changes that they've made. But I don't think there's any question about it. When you go as young as they're going in the secondary, there could be some growing pains involved. And I think Janoris Jenkins is going to be good. I think that's an important addition for them. I wouldn't mind seeing them bringing in another guy like Richard Sherman. But I agree. Like, if you're asking me who I think is more likely to regain their form from the past, I would say Zach Ertz. I mean, he's 30. He had the high ankle sprain last year. High ankle sprain's a pretty big deal. He seems to be healthy now. To me, there's no reason why Zach Ertz couldn't give you another couple of years of pretty top-level play at the tight end position.
That's why I go with Ertz, because, yes, your offense on paper is better than what your defense is right now. But if you sign Ertz and he gets close to that form, you're bordering on unstoppable offensively. Yeah. And Richard Sherman, I don't know if he's going to come in here and really make the secondary all that better.
I don't know.
Like, I don't know how much gas he has left in the tank. So I would go with Ertz on that.
Well, it's also like I feel like if you're bringing Richard Sherman in, like at some point, even if you're bringing him in, you're hoping that either he or Janoris Jenkins aren't starting by the end of that time. Mm-hmm. Like, you're hoping Caleb Farley comes in and can play immediately. Like, obviously, like Christian Fulton is in the plans to play. He's going to play, and he's going to play early. But you're hoping, like at some point, Farley can be healthy enough to step in and fill that role. I mean, that's what you picked him in the first round for. He needs to come in, he needs to be available, and he needs to play. So of those two options, I'm probably going with Ertz too. I see the temptation, though, with Richard Sherman. I think he could come in and give you some important snaps. That veteran presence could be good for this Titans room. But, man, just think about this offense with Zach Ertz. You got Derrick Henry, you got A.J. Brown, Julio Jones coming in the fold as well. And I agree with you, Adam. Like, I don't think they need Anthony Ferkser to be this stud. We've talked a lot about his blocking and how that's going to have to get better here on the show. And I'm sure it will. I'm sure he's worked on that. He's worked on his body, as Joe Rexrode talked about last week, in terms of getting ready for that and getting ready for the grind. And it's obvious at this point the Titans like Anthony Ferkser and think that he's a good player, and I think he is too. But, man, Zach Ertz, if you got top-level Zach Ertz back from Philadelphia and he was a part of the fold, think about the options that creates for Ryan Tannehill. Now, then, what that also could do is add to the discussion that we're already having with this offense of, all right, you've got one football to spread around to all these different weapons of Derrick Henry and A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. You add Zach Ertz into that mix as well. That's a whole lot of big-name guys out there on that offense with one football to spread around for Ryan Tannehill. Creates an interesting kind of dynamic there if Ertz is added into the fold.
Yeah, I just think, I have a lot more questions about the Titans secondary than I do about their offense. And, are the Titans going to be a team that wins games by outscoring the opposition, where they're going to have to win, 40-something to 30-something in order to win? I think I don't want to say that there are still questions on the offensive side of the ball. But I think there are bigger questions on defense, not just as in the secondary, but what we were talking about with Bud Dupree, up front as well. And I think, you've answered. I feel like the Titans have answered a lot more questions on the offensive side of the ball this summer than they have on the defensive side of the ball. So, like, I see Zach Ertz as a luxury. I would see Richard Sherman more as a need for the Titans than Zach Ertz.
So, if Caleb Farley is not able to play week one, like what is the starting cornerback rotation look like right now? Like, you're thinking about, obviously, Jenkins coming in. You've got Christian Fulton there as well. Like, who's going to be the other corner? You throwing Breon Borders out there? I don't know. I don't know what they would do at that point. I'm interested to see how they handle that. Do you
want to see that? Like, that's the question. You don't want to risk that. You hope that Caleb Farley is healthy enough to play in week one. But if he's not, you are throwing out, with the exception of Janoris Jenkins, an incredibly inexperienced cornerback, a cornerback group out there. And do you want to take the risk of seeing what that could be like? If Caleb Farley was healthy, I think you could pass on Richard Sherman. I almost think is Richard Sherman Caleb Farley insurance?
Maybe.
Just in case, he isn't ready for week one.
I'm interested to see how they handle him because, obviously with the back issues that we talked about, I'm wearing the Skiatika shirt today, and
I was trying to read that.
Yeah.
What's with you and the t-shirts, man? You just got you got so many T-shirts. Not like you mean you have to wear T-shirts. You can't be in here shirtless. But I mean, like,
maybe that's what we'll do the show like tomorrow.
It is very hot outside.
You wouldn't be the first one to be shirtless in there.
Really? All right, that'd be great.
We'll talk about that during the break. But you've got your Vibin shirt. You've got this shirt. Who made this shirt? Did you make
a loyal listener made this shirt?
A loyal listener made that shirt. So I mean, Robby Stanley needs to go into the T-shirt business. But anyway, please continue. Yeah, you were going on. I interrupted you because I was just taken back by your shirt.
Titans Talk on Periscope says, "Are you seriously asking this? Elijah Molden in the slot?" Yeah, that's great. Elijah Molden's not played an NFL game yet, so you just sitting here acting like Elijah Molden. Oh my God, Elijah Molden's going to be in the slot. You have no idea. You have no idea. You have no idea what's going to be. So that's the point. There are rookies out there that have not played in an NFL game yet. It could not hurt to add a little bit more experience to that veteran or to that cornerback position in the locker room.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I went with Sherman over Ertz.
Give me Zach Ertz or give me death.
Wow, that's a heck of a bar. Love him. Big Zach Ertz fan if you're Ryan Porth over here. Love it. We'll continue the conversation on the Titans when we come back, including could the Titans' chief rival in the division, could their general manager be helping them out along the way? We'll get to that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Adam Vingan, Ryan Porth here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee, discussing the Titans and all things NFL, taking your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. And an interesting article coming out on Pro Football Talk about Colts general manager Chris Ballard and the approach that he's taken in free agency. And one of the quotes in here talking about how, Chris Ballard went on, I believe, the Athletic Football Show with Robert Mays and said he'd rather save cap space for the future than overpay a player just because he happens to be the best available at a given position in a given year. Saying, quote, "We got good players out of free agency and we've been successful. We're just not the biggest fans right out of the gate free agency, where you're paying B players A+ money, which is going to affect you down the line. There's a cost to that." And, of course, a lot of Colts fans wondering, why weren't the Colts a little bit more active in their pursuit of Julio Jones? He ends up with the Titans. Titans get a great player. Colts have some cap space, but I look at their wide receivers right now, and I think it leaves a lot to be desired on that front. So this has been the approach that the Colts have taken with Chris Ballard. And look, I mean, it served them well. I think Chris Ballard has done a really good job. He's drafted well. They've been very patient in their approach. Obviously, they made a bigger move this offseason to bring in Carson Wentz at the quarterback position. So it's not like they just sit there and do nothing rather than just start drafting people. But they've not been as active in free agency, especially when it comes to the skill position players. But at some point, though, like if you're the Colts, don't you have to start to spend some of this cap space? And he talks about, being patient and how, you build your team that way. But at some point, with the group that you have, don't you have to go out there and take a swing for the fences? At some point, if you're Chris Ballard and the Indianapolis Colts, I feel like, Colts fans have read this, and I've seen some reaction, and they're like, yeah, that sounds great. But, like, at some point, you've got to pay some players to stay here. You got to pay some players to come in, and the Titans obviously have shown that they're not afraid to go do that. What do you think of the approach that Chris Ballard has taken, maybe a little bit more of a patient approach than John Robinson and the Titans to this point?
I think a lot of general managers would, be wise to take Chris Ballard's advice. Think about how many mistakes are made in free agency in every sport every year because, as Chris Ballard said, to paraphrase, people throw money at a player who they believe is the best available player at a given position, and it doesn't work out. Our Colts reporter, Zach Kiefer, within the past couple of weeks did a fan survey, and one of the questions, there were a couple of questions that were asked. One was, how has Chris Ballard done as GM? 88.1% said he's one of the best in the league. This is according to the fans. And thoughts on his free agent approach, 63.5% of the people who responded to Zach's poll said it's the right mindset for the long term and it'll pay off. And Zach writes, the Colts have been in a tremendous salary cap position in recent years, allowing them to make bold moves when they want to, such as trading for DeForest Buckner and signing him to a massive extension, signing Phillip Rivers, trading for Carson Wentz. So, it's not as if though the Colts haven't made moves in order to be competitive. Of course, when you do have salary cap space, fans want to spend it. A lot of fans see the numbers available and say, well, what's the point of just sitting there on that money? Go and spend it. Go build a winner. But I think based on what, I've read, it feels like Colts fans actually agree with that approach from their team's general manager.
Now, Ryan Porth, you are fearful of all things Indianapolis Colts. You have been healthy respect is the proper term that you have for the Colts.
I am fearful of all things Indianapolis Colts when it's a Sunday and the Titans are playing them.
Yes.
Or a Thursday night or Monday night, whatever. I am not overly fearful of the Indianapolis Colts in totality, like for the season.
Okay.
But when it's the Titans playing the Colts, yeah, I'm scared to death.
You've seen some things.
Oh, yeah.
Some ghost of yesterday.
I have had nightmares about the Indianapolis Colts multiple times in the last 15 years.
So what do you
might want to go get that checked out.
Maybe 20.
Yeah, maybe so. So what do you think about this approach from Chris Ballard?
I'm passionate about sports, Adam.
That's right. That's exactly right. What do you think of this approach from Chris Ballard, their general manager? A little bit more of a patient approach. Obviously, as Adam pointed out, they've made some big moves. They've had to make some trades. DeForest Buckner coming in. Big move this offseason with Carson Wentz coming in. But it's not like the Indianapolis Colts are this big player when it comes to free agency or making big-time moves. What do you think of the approach that Chris Ballard has taken to this point? Do you like it? Do you not like it if you're the Titans fan and a Titans point of view?
Well, from a Titans fan point of view, I like it because, for instance, let's take the Julio Jones example. The Colts could have acquired Julio Jones. They didn't. The Titans ended up getting him. And I think the Titans surpassed the Colts in the AFC South race because of that. Whether it plays out that way, I don't know. But I think there is such thing of being too conservative, where if you just sit on your roster and draft picks year over year over year, you're banking on your scouting department basically putting together a Super Bowl caliber roster rather than adding a piece here and there, whether it's a big piece or a medium piece that can help elevate you.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like the Chiefs have 1,000% relied on their draft to make them a Super Bowl contender the last few years. So I think at some point Chris Ballard's going to have to spend his money, or they're just going to be a wild card team every year and not make a run.
This year kind of it flusters me a little bit from that standpoint because, you're bringing in Carson Wentz, and that's, people think a variety of different ways about Carson Wentz. Some people think he's going to come in, he's going to be awful. Some people think he's going to come in and he's going to set the world on fire, and the Colts are going to revitalize his career. I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. I think he's going to be okay. I think Carson Wentz is going to come in. Certainly, if you're him, you've got to feel a lot better about the offensive line that you've got in front of you here than you do in Philadelphia. So that's a big positive for the Colts coming in. But I look at their weapons offensively. There's just not a lot there. I mean, you've got Pittman there, and I feel good about him in terms of I think he's a good player, but they don't have a number one wide receiver in Indianapolis. And I would think
you don't think T.Y. Hilton is the number one receiver
anymore? Not anymore. He's too old. He's not the same player that he
too
used
old.
to be.
He's 31 years old.
I know.
Like Hibbs was saying.
He's not the same player that he used to be. I mean, that speed is just not quite there. He's still good. He's a good player. He's not a number one wide receiver anymore.
How many nightmares has Porth had about T.Y. Hilton?
Probably a lot.
Was what I want to know.
Probably a lot.
Not all that much.
Is it Peyton Manning? Dallas Clark? Marvin Harrison?
Oh. I hated Marvin
the
Harrison.
Pain coming back.
Hated Reggie Wayne.
Frank Gore.
Andrew, mostly
Frank
Andrew
Gore.
Luck.
Yeah. I kind of forgot about Andrew Luck. Sorry.
Yeah. Mostly Andrew Luck, Dwight Freeney, Jack Doyle.
Jack Doyle,
Titans
surprised to
killer.
find he's only in his early 30s. He's been there forever.
Titans killer. Jack Doyle. Pat McAfee. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Pat McAfee.
The list goes on and on.
Yeah, Pat McAfee coming to the draft and trolling the Titans.
And there was that, too.
But, I mean, they've got, we'll see with Carson Wentz. That's a big question
Well, I say
mark.
all that to say, wouldn't you think this would be a good year to try to help him as much as possible? To me, it makes no sense for the Colts not to have been in on Julio Jones. And I don't know if they were totally out. They could have done some digging and kicking the tires. I don't know. But for the Titans, they'll end up winning that battle, and Julio Jones coming here. I would think if I'm the Colts, you're trying to put Carson Wentz in the best possible situation to succeed. And if they just weren't in on Julio Jones at all, I think it's a huge mistake by Chris Ballard.
We haven't mentioned Jonathan Taylor. He had a great season last year.
They've got a really good running game.
They've got a good running game, and Marlon Mack as well. But yeah, I mean, their depth. They've got T.Y. Hilton. They have Michael Pittman Jr. They have Paris Campbell. They have Jack Doyle. Those are their top receivers and tight end. It's not a great group, but you would hope. We'll see what it's like. You look at the other side of the ball. They've got DeForest Buckner. They've got Darius Leonard. They've got a good group on the other side of the ball. But we'll see. Yeah, I mean, I can see your point. If you're trying to resurrect the career of Carson Wentz, you would think that you would want to give him as many options, high-quality options as possible. But Chris Ballard, as we discussed, wanted to go the more conservative route, and we'll see if that pays off.
Well, and I think long-term, that's probably a good approach. And look, I do think the windows are a little bit different. I think the Titans' window to win is right now. And I think if you're the Colts, you're still trying to figure out the quarterback position. What exactly do you have in Carson Wentz? They've got a young team around him as well. So you feel like the Colts are going to be a factor for the next few years. I mean, it's hard to say in the NFL. It's hard to really look beyond the next 2-3 years because that's just what the window is in the NFL, and teams change so much from that time. But I think it's obvious if you're the Titans, you've got Derrick Henry right now in the prime of his career. You've got Ryan Tannehill playing very well for your team. I mean, their window to win is right now. And I can understand from John Robinson's point of view, maybe a little bit more of a sense of urgency, and it just doesn't feel like Chris Ballard has that sense of urgency. And look, maybe he ends up making me look stupid, and the Colts come out this year and they go 13-4. I had to do some math in my head to make sure 13-4 was the right one with 17 games, but it is.
That just sounds so weird.
I know, it does. But maybe that's what happens this year and they come out and they're good. I've gotten to the point with this team, I think there's a significant gap between the Titans and the Colts, and I think the Titans are the clear favorite in the AFC South at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the other teams in the division. I mean, the Colts will be in the mix certainly, but the Texans and Jaguars aren't much of a threat to the Tennessee Titans, at least on paper. So yeah, I mean, it's really a two-team race in the AFC South, and it may really, and the race might be the Titans with a significant head start over the Indianapolis Colts. So, a division title is definitely, on the table, another division title for the Titans. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, stranger things have happened in the NFL, and the Colts always seem to find a way to haunt Brian Porth's dreams. So it's possible that could still happen this season.
Let's go to our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Heidi from Dixon texting in, what if the Colts never get another elite franchise quarterback? It's exciting to think about. They've certainly had their run on elite franchise quarterbacks.
I agree, Heidi.
I thought for a long time that they were just going to tank and end up with Trevor Lawrence. Then you could go from Peyton Manning to Andrew Luck to Trevor Lawrence, but he went to another team in the AFC South. By the way, Trevor Lawrence signing his contract, now $36 million richer.
So they've gone from Peyton Manning to Andrew Luck to Jacoby Brissett.
And then Phillip Rivers.
To Phillip Rivers.
And now Carson Wentz.
Now to Carson Wentz. That's a kind of a slight downgrade.
You forgot Curtis Painter in there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Who could forget?
Who could forget Curtis Painter?
Dan Orlovsky.
Oh, yeah. Friend of the show.
Who beat the Titans.
That's right.
That one time when they were winless.
Friend of the show. Johnny on Twitter says, Pat McAfee, if the Titans can win it all in this window, I hope Indy almost immediately gets to host a draft. That'd be good. I wonder who would do the trolling for the Titans if they hosted a draft in Indy.
Richard Sherman.
Maybe it would be. Maybe it'd be Richard Sherman.
He's pretty good at trash talking. He would basically cut the same promo on Pat McAfee as he did on Michael Crabtree.
Yeah, it'd be pretty good. I'd pay to see that one. When we come back, we will switch gears and get Adam's thoughts on a popular topic right now in the world of sports. Should seasonal awards include the playoffs? We'll get to that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode, live from the wholesaling studios, powered by RumbleOn.com here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in. Hour number 3 of Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Adam Vingan, Ryan Porth here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Joe Rexrode is off this week. He is on vacation out in California, so we hope Joe is having fun out there. Adam in today, Wednesday, and Thursday as well. Taking your thoughts all show long on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. So, Adam, last week we had a conversation about UC Saros finishing in 6th place in the Vezina Trophy voting, which, of course, is voted on by general managers, and that led to an entire discussion about how the voting process should be handled, who should be voting on these awards, should it be some combination of media, of players, of executives, how should awards be voted on, not only in hockey, but really in all sports as well. And some people have said, why do we not include the postseason with these awards as well? You've got that being a part of the picture. You've got, obviously, players that rise to the occasion, have big moments in the postseason, and then are not considered for the awards at the end of the year. What do you think about this? Do you think that the NHL, the NFL, all these different sports should include the playoffs when it comes to their season awards, their seasonal awards? How do you think that sports should go about handling that? And we'll start with the NHL and that process, just because you vote on these awards in the NHL.
I sure do. I was one of the 100 voters who selected the winners of multiple NHL awards, including the Hart Trophy, the Norris Trophy, the Selke Trophy, the Calder Trophy, the Lady Byng Trophy, the Masterton Award. Just to be clear, we talked about this last week. We talked about it a lot, but the general managers of the NHL vote on the Vezina Trophy winner.
So don't yell at you.
So don't yell at me. UC Saros, as you mentioned, finished 6th in Vezina Trophy voting, but finished, I believe, 11th in Hart Trophy voting. Received a 3rd place vote and a couple of 4th and 5th place votes. And certainly you can make the case that UC Saros was worthy of Hart Trophy consideration when you consider where the Predators were when he started his second half dominance and how well he played throughout the second half of the regular season. I'm okay with it being okay with awards being regular season awards, because there are postseason awards. In the NHL, there's a Conn Smythe Trophy, which goes to basically the MVP of the playoffs. You think about college basketball, there is a most outstanding player, not just in the Final Four, but I believe there are also regional most outstanding players when the 4 teams get to the Final Four. The team that wins a region, there is a most outstanding player award. I think the two should be separated, because of just the differences in the regular season and the playoffs. We're talking about hockey. It was a 56-game season this year, but, typically an 82-game schedule. A player's performance over, several months and 82 games is different than the player's performance over the course of the postseason. For example, I mean, this might be an extreme example, but Connor McDavid was by far the best player in the NHL this season. And that was reflected in the fact that he received all 100 first-place votes for the Hart Trophy this season. He was a unanimous MVP, but they were swept out of the first round by the Winnipeg Jets. If the postseason was included in Hart Trophy voting, would Connor McDavid still have won? Probably, because he had an incredible regular season. But it probably would have been a lot tighter. And I don't think that a poor postseason performance should take away or diminish a player's regular season performance. So I think I'm okay with the two being separate, because there are awards given for postseason performance as well as regular season performance.
It's interesting because I agree with you. I think McDavid probably still would have won, but it would have been tighter, I think, for sure. It's interesting.
Yeah, he was basically a non-factor in that series.
Yeah, I mean, McKinnon probably would have got a few more votes. I mean, it's interesting, like the guys at the top of that list,
I mean, what about Austin Matthews? I mean, they had
exactly.
a 3-1 series lead against the Canadians and lost in 7 games.
Right.
You know, he wasn't the elite goal scorer that we've come to know him. You know, that we've come to know him to be.
Maybe a little bit more love for Andrei Vasilevsky.
Perhaps. Nikita Kucherov
Yeah.
would have come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
You know, he didn't even play in the regular season,
Exactly.
much to the chagrin of non-Lightning fans out there.
So it's an interesting thought because, you know, I look at this and I agree. I have no problem with the awards just being in the regular season, but I do think there's got to be a better way to do it because, look, and this is not just to sit here and rag on the general managers because we know, like our fellow writers, our fellow media members, they do some stupid stuff sometimes with some of the votes that they have.
I was really surprised by the fact – I was pleasantly surprised by the fact that Connor McDavid was unanimous. I
thought there'd be a few that
I thought there would be 1 or 2 people who would vote for somebody else. You know, speaking of other awards, the Calder Trophy, which goes to the NHL Rookie of the Year, Kirill Kaprizov of the Minnesota Wild won. He received 99 out of 100
right.
votes. The one other vote went to Jason Robertson of the Dallas Stars. And look, Robertson had a good season. You know, the Predators saw that firsthand. He's going to be a pain in their butt for a long time if he continues to play like this. But Kaprizov was clearly the Rookie of the Year. And each voter has his or her own standards for how they determine who should win an award. You know, some people just look at the basics. They look at the goals. They look at the points. They look at a team's record. You know, some people dig really deep into the analytics to determine a player's value. But, you know, I think a panel of sorts that combines reporters, coaches, GMs, fellow players, I think that would be better. I think it would give a better sense of who deserves an award because, you know, think, for example, like the Lady Byng Trophy, which goes to the most gentlemanly player. Like, what does that mean exactly? For a lot of reporters, that means, okay, who had the most points and had the fewest penalty minutes. But, like, does that really equal gentlemanly play? Like, how does a player conduct himself on the ice? How does he speak to officials? How does he deal with other players? Like,
right.
we can't tell that from where we're sitting. You know, I think, you know, Jacob Slavin, the Hurricanes defenseman, won that award this season, you know, because he was playing top pairing minutes and committed 1 penalty all season, and it was a puck over the glass penalty.
Right.
So, you know, he absolutely deserved it. I voted for Jacob Slavin, you know, on my ballot. I gave him my first place vote. But, you know, there are other things that should be taken into consideration that reporters are not privy to, and that's why I think, you know, maybe even officials should be brought in to vote on that award. But I think, you know, I think there needs to be more variety in who is voting for awards.
Let's go to our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Nate texting in, if postseason would be accounted for all awards, how many players of the final 2 teams would receive more votes and maybe more awards?
For sure.
Very common.
I mean, think about the Canadiens where they are right now. Carey Price has not had a great Stanley Cup final. He did have a great game last night, but in general has not had a great Stanley Cup final. But the Canadiens would not have made it to the Stanley Cup final without Carey Price. You know, think about the Lightning. Andrei Vasilevsky, you know, did not win the Vezina Trophy, which to me was, you know, the only true surprise of the NHL awards this season was Marc-Andre Fleury winning the Vezina. He deserved it, I think. But I thought Vasilevsky had it in the bag, just about how good he was. Remember, GM's vote for that award. But you know, you've got Braden Point, you've got Nikita Kucherov, you've got Andrei Vasilevsky. Who would win that award? I agree with Nate. Like, you know, you're going to look at teams that get to the Stanley Cup final or win the championship, and that's what the Conn Smythe is for. In the NHL, the Conn Smythe goes to the most valuable player in the playoffs, which you know, there have been a 1 or 2 circumstances where a losing player has won that award. I believe it was Jean-Sebastien Giguère won for the then Mighty Ducks of Anaheim, despite losing in the Stanley Cup final. But it often goes to the player on the winning team. So, yes, I mean, I think you would think think about if that were to happen. Think about how many more MVP awards LeBron James would have.
That's the one sport where I would like to see postseason awards or the postseason be accounted. Like
in the NBA,
yeah, in the NBA, like the MVP, it becomes pretty clear who the MVP of the league should be as the playoffs go around. I mean, look, Jokic won it this year. He was really good, but Chris Paul's been awesome. Giannis in Milwaukee. The one sport where I would be cool with the postseason factoring into the awards, I think, is the NBA.
I'm pulling up the NBA most valuable player voting. It was Nikola Jokic, right?
Yep.
Won the MVP. I want to see if I can find the voting because he received 91 first place votes and earned 971 total points from a global panel of 100 sports writers and broadcasters, as well as the vote. What's interesting is that in the NBA they actually give a vote to they give a fan vote, and he won that as well. So he was at 971 total points. Joel Embiid was second at 586. Steph Curry was third at 453. Giannis Antetokounmpo 348. Chris Paul 139. And the Nuggets went out in the second round.
I believe so.
Yes. So
they've been first. No, it was second.
It was second.
Yep.
Yeah. So, would Jokic have won the MVP if postseason was included? Probably not, because he didn't lead the Nuggets to where they expected to be. But Jokic had a great season and deserved to win the award. So, I think it's fine to separate the two.
Let's go back to our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Brian texting in. Andre Vasilevsky should receive an award for the largest pads. The guy looks like the Stay Puffed Marshmallow Man in that.
Well, they all have to wear the same size pads, at least relative to their size. But
right. He's a gigantic goaltender.
He is a large man. The thing that's amazing about Andre Vasilevsky, there are a lot of things that are great about Andre Vasilevsky, but he has 4 consecutive series clinching shutouts, dating to last year's Stanley Cup final, which is the longest streak in NHL history.
You calling your shot for tomorrow? Is he getting a shutout tomorrow?
I'm gonna do it. Can I preemptively call my shot? I'm going to say that Andre Vasilevsky will pitch a shutout in a clinching game for the 5th consecutive series, and the Lightning will win the Stanley Cup.
There you go.
There's my first called shot of the week.
We'll continue to take your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Hey, this Thursday, it's your chance to participate in the Nashville SC Pick to Click, brought to you by Camarena Tequila. If you guess correctly which player scores a goal in the game this Thursday night, you'll win a prize pack and a 4-pack of tickets to an upcoming Nashville SC home game. Participate this Thursday morning at 9:45. We'll continue the conversation when we come back. Should awards factor in the postseason in sports? We'll get to that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Adam Vingan here with you today on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Ryan Porth spinning the hits, making things happen behind the glass here on the program. Taking your thoughts on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Heidi from Dixon on the text line says, I think some of the awards come so late into the postseason that playoff results have a partial effect on the voting subconsciously. If it's going to only include the regular season, the votes should happen immediately when it ends. I think for the most part that is the case. Like your voting for the NHL is due when? Is it right at the end of the regular season, first week of the playoffs?
I believe if I recall correctly, the ballots are due before the start of the playoffs.
Okay.
So, they're not influenced by the postseason. But to Heidi's point, there is one NHL award that is a bit different than the rest. The Jim Gregory GM of the Year award, I believe, which is decided by a random panel of other executives and broadcasters and whatnot. I believe the voting for that was done after the second round of the playoffs.
Yeah.
And the finalists for that award this year were Marc Bergevin of the Montreal Canadiens, Lou Lamoriello of the New York Islanders, and Bill Zito of the Florida Panthers.
Which, let me just tell you, had that vote taken place at the end of the regular season, Marc Bergevin's not on
exactly.
that list.
Like the reason Marc Bergevin was a finalist for that award was because the Canadiens had surprised two teams and made it to the Stanley Cup semifinals, as they were called this year.
Well, didn't David Poyle win GM of the year the year they went to the Cup?
Yes.
I think so, yeah.
And he probably would not have won that award if the voting ended at the end of the regular season.
Probably not.
Probably not. But that's why I feel like that should be. I like if all of your awards are going to be voted on after the regular season, that should include this GM of the Year
I would think
award.
so. Like, pick one.
Like who? Like I'm trying to think of who the finalists would have been in the NHL. Probably. I mean, Bill Zito, who's the Panthers GM, probably would have still been a finalist. I mean, the Panthers made some moves and they were better than expected. Maybe Don Waddell in Carolina.
Yeah.
It's a good question, but I think that is an award that was absolutely influenced by the first two rounds of the postseason, which should not be the case. I think all awards should be regular season based.
Would fans care more about the awards if they were postseason based? Because postseason is typically what fans care most about.
That is true. But it goes back to what I was saying about there being postseason awards. Now, maybe there could be more postseason awards, other than finals MVP, Conn Smythe, whatever whichever league you're watching. But I think I don't think you should, like I said, I don't think you should diminish a player's regular season by how their team performs in the playoffs. For example, I am of the mind that an MVP cannot be on a team that missed the playoffs, because if your team misses the playoffs, then how valuable were you?
Right.
And that was a question a couple of years ago, I think, with Connor McDavid. Again, he had another great season, but the Oilers missed the playoffs. So should he have been considered an MVP? Because even though he had the best individual season, his team missed the playoffs. So how valuable could he be? I think that's something you should take into consideration. But maybe there should be more postseason awards. Maybe that's the solution. I don't know.
Well, how many Baltimore Ravens fans worship and remember Lamar Jackson's MVP season?
Right.
I mean, the Titans schooled him.
They ruined it.
In the playoffs, and that is the lasting memory of Ravens fans with Lamar Jackson's MVP season. And then when he's named the MVP 3 weeks later, it's like,
thanks.
It doesn't feel as great if you're a Ravens fan. I don't know. I'm just kind of posing that, not to say that that's the reason why you should include the postseason, but
I think they should do the awards before the playoffs start. Just announce them. The votes are in.
Kind of like what they do with the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, the votes are in. Just go.
Yeah, I don't think you need to wait. I don't think you need to wait close to 2 months to build up to it. I thought the NHL, first of all, I don't miss the NHL awards ceremony, with a bunch of C-list celebrities and really bad skits and stuff of that nature.
Just cheesy as can be.
But, they announced one award a day for, a week and then had an awards show, quote-unquote, which is just a 30-minute show, which was not entertaining either. But at least it was a 30-minute show and not, 2 or 3 hours. Yes. Yeah, I think before the playoffs start, you can announce that. Just maybe it shouldn't take long to tabulate the votes. Just announce it before the playoffs start. Don't drag it out.
Brian on the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, says Brad Marchand with the Taster's Choice Award because from biting people
because he likes to lick people.
Yeah, apparently so.
I don't
Maybe
know.
They can add that to the list.
Who would sponsor that award?
I don't know.
Chapstick.
maybe so.
Icebreakers gum.
Maybe so. Listerine, like PK Subban.
Listerine.
Yeah, that'd be it.
Yeah. The Colgate Liquor Award. It doesn't now. I don't like that.
I don't like that either.
Dump that now.
That could be misperceived for a liquor named Colgate.
Well, there's that. That's for sure.
Do you know anyone named Colgate?
A liquor like the drink.
Like the drink.
Oh.
Hey, hop on that bus and catch up, Vingan. Here we go. Let's go to our text line.
It's a little early.
Driven by Wilson County.
I'm sorry if your name's out there and your name is Colgate. I'm sorry about that.
Robert texting in, regular season awards and postseason awards means more banners to hang. There is that.
I'm sick of the banner jokes.
There's a lot of those flying around.
Those are so 2017 or 18, whichever year it was.
Like 18.
2018.
Yeah.
Remember 2018?
A long time ago.
It was a long
Simpler
time.
times.
Simpler times. Yeah, banner jokes are overdone now, guys. Let's just stop with banner
So what's
jokes.
the best way to vote on NHL awards? Because people were they were fired up last week about the general managers. And look, I get it. If you're an NHL general manager, you got a million different things on your mind. You've got a lot of things to do coming down the stretch. You're worried about your team. You're making a playoff run in some cases. Or you're worried about this year, like what are you going to do with the expansion draft, getting ready for the actual draft with some guys that don't even have any tape on them. I mean, there's a lot of things going on. And I do feel like a lot of times when, the general managers are voting on an award, it's, hey, we're just going to throw this together real quick and I'm going to turn in my ballot. Or even, in some cases, which this is what they do on the coaches poll in college football sometimes of, hey, I'm going to get my SID to do this and just fill this out and we'll move on from there. How do you think the awards should be handled from a voting perspective? We had somebody last week throw out the idea of why don't you do 33% of the vote from the media, another 33% from the players, and another 33% from executives. What do you think of that idea?
I mean, I'm fine with that. I mean, I think it's a privilege to vote on awards, and I take that responsibility very seriously. I think from the time you get the ballot to the time it's due, I think it's about 2 weeks, and I take that time to do the research, because I want to make an informed decision, But I do believe that, that the winners of those awards, I think they would come from a better place if you had the viewpoints of other people. Like if we're using that panel, suggestion as an example, coaches and GMs see different things that players see than reporters see. And I think it's important, to have all of their perspectives considered in voting on important awards. So, I'm not sure if my fellow reporters would agree with it, but if the NHL, because that's the league I cover, adopted something like that, I would be for it. I would have no problem with that.
How much do you think, Adam, about the voting process as the season goes along? For instance, like Victor Hedman with the Lightning, when Tampa played here, did you ever think, I'm going to vote for Hedman for Norris, or I'm not going to vote for Hedman?
Well, this year was definitely harder because you only saw 7 or 8 teams.
Right.
And that's why the Professional Hockey Writers Association changed the voting system this year. They made sure to have an even representation among each division. There were 20 reporters selected from each division, and then 20 quote unquote like at large national broadcast and reporters. Like Victor Hedman, by the way, was not even on my Norris Trophy ballot. He was a finalist for the award, and I didn't even put him on my ballot 1 through 5. But yeah, I mean, that's something that is definitely taken into consideration. I mean, especially with someone like Victor Hedman, who's a finalist every year. Usually I only see him play in person twice, but this year I got to see him play in person 4 or 5 times. So you certainly get to a better idea of what the player is. I mean, think about last year with Roman Josi. I mean, watching Roman Josi every night, absolutely. I knew by the end of the season, like, this guy is going to get my vote for the Norris Trophy. Like, a lot of people around the league don't watch Nashville all the time, but I watch Roman Josi every night, and I knew that he deserved to win that award, and he did by a significant margin. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely something you take into consideration, and you have to do a lot of research because you can't watch every game. So you talk to reporters who cover players you're considering. You look at the analytics, you look at statistics, you watch highlights, you watch games when you can. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it.
Coming up next, we'll ask a very important question. What in the world is it going to take to get Adam Vingan into college football? We'll get to that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Adam Vingan in today for Joe Rexrode, who's on vacation. Taking your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHunting.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Blake texting in saying that the Brad Marchand Award, sponsored by KFC. KFC finger licking good. It's pretty good.
He wasn't licking any fingers, though. Not that I'm aware of.
Not that I'm aware of. Brian, the PK Subban Halitosis Award, the bad breath, that's good. Lots of options on the table.
I would like to point this out on a completely unrelated note. There was a tweet that just crossed my timeline from Tampa International Airport which said that Tampa International Airport will suspend operations at 5 p.m. today due to Tropical Storm Elsa. So the Canadiens and the Lightning better get to the airport quick.
Better get home.
So that they can get back in time for Game 5.
So there is an important issue that we've got to solve here on the show.
Is it, though?
It's very important. And as we know, this is a football hotbed here in the Middle Tennessee area. College football is a big deal here. Even though Tennessee, it's not gone as well as they've hoped the last decade plus. A very passionate fan base, lots of excitement on the Vanderbilt front with Clark Lee coming into the mix. College football is a big deal here in SEC country. What are your thoughts on college football? Why do you hate college football?
Okay, hate is a strong word. I don't hate college football. I've just never had a significant interest in college football, which perhaps makes me unique among our ilk in this town.
Which is amazing because you're a huge college basketball guy.
I am a huge college basketball guy. So let's set the stage here. Let's explain why college football and I have never gotten together.
Okay.
So I was raised in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and the Hampton Roads area of Virginia, which includes Norfolk and Hampton and Newport News and Chesapeake. Those cities have bred a significant amount of NFL/college football talent, and other sports too, specifically the NBA. But a lot of great college football/NFL players were raised in the Hampton Roads region of Virginia, where I grew up. But there's no major university in Virginia Beach or really in the Hampton Roads area. There's Norfolk State, there's Hampton University, both of which have football teams, but they're not powerhouses. When I was growing up, the closest thing to the closest university that was a college football powerhouse was Virginia Tech. And that was during the era of Michael Vick, who, by the way, from the Hampton Roads region.
Yep.
I remember watching, I believe it was the 1999 championship game between Virginia Tech and Florida State. That was a big deal, mostly because Michael Vick was from the area, but also a lot of people who live in Virginia Beach are graduates of Virginia Tech. But Virginia Tech is like 6 hours from Virginia Beach, so it's not like it's around the corner. I also attended a university, American University, that does not have a football team, so I didn't go to college football games as a college student because I went to a school that didn't know a team season. In college football, one loss or maybe two, you're basically out of it. But
a lot of people love that about college football because every game matters.
That is an argument for that for sure. But I like what I like about the NCAA tournament is just every year there's at least a couple of things that happen that nobody expects. At the end of the day, in college football, either Alabama's going to win or Clemson's going to win, or maybe sometimes another random team will show up, maybe a Georgia, maybe, I don't know, who else finished in the playoff this year? Notre Dame, maybe those teams will show up. But it's like, okay, call me, the season starts in what, October? First game's usually in October, September?
Late August, early September.
Oh, wow. Even earlier. Late August, early September? Yeah, I know then that Alabama's probably going to win. So what's the point? What's the fun in that when you know how it's going to end? Like, that's why the NBA Finals, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, is so exciting this particular season, is because you have two teams, the Phoenix Suns and the Milwaukee Bucks, who who don't normally face in the NBA Finals. I heard last night that there is not a member of either team that has ever won an NBA championship.
Yep.
That makes it incredibly exciting. And most of the time it's, look, as a big basketball fan, like, did I love watching Golden State versus LeBron's team for 4 or 5 consecutive years? I mean, it was still great basketball, but it was sort of anticlimactic. I feel like college football is anticlimactic. And that's why that plus the where I grew up and all that is why college football and I we've just never meshed.
So what's it going to take to change this? What's it going to take for college football to gain your interest? Because as you said, they've made some changes. There's a playoff system involved now. You're now to the point in all college athletics where name, image, and likeness laws have gone into effect and players can start making money. Hibbs texted us earlier about a situation in Miami, which we're going to get to coming up here in a minute, where they're essentially just sponsoring all the players and they're getting paid like $6,000 each. So it's changing, and the landscape of college football is about to change. What's it going to take for college football to capture the attention of Adam Vingan at this point?
That's a good question. I mean, I need to find a team to root for. I mean, I like watching sports with some investment.
Sure.
The thing is, I've known you now for a long time, and the agony that Tennessee football brings to you every fall, I don't want to be a part of that. I have no interest in that. It just seems like a painful. It just seems painful to be a fan of the University of Tennessee football team.
It is.
But I also don't want to be a front runner. Like, I'm not going to root for Alabama, or Clemson, So, I think what we should do is we should take suggestions from the listeners about which team I should root for, and maybe I'll find one.
Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good one.
Go
Torres.
Bearcats. Well, let us know on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Which college football team should Adam Vingan root for?
Well, why not the Duke Blue Devils? You root for them in basketball.
Exactly.
You can cherish their 8-4 seasons that end up in the Meineke Car Care Bowl. And
first of all, it was always the Belk Bowl. You always knew that Duke was going to end up in the Belk Bowl. And one time they were in the Pinstripe Bowl at Yankee Stadium.
Yeah.
So
he knows his Duke football history.
Maybe he is a fan.
I mean, remember, like I was saying this to you guys earlier. It's like, remember the play, I think it was last year, where Daniel Jones was scrambling and he was on his way for a touchdown and he tripped over his own feet and just face planted with no one around him. That's Duke football to a T. I hope that Daniel Jones does well, but as I said, as someone born in Durham, North Carolina, I'm a big Duke basketball fan, and that helps to root for a team that's good. It does help to root for a team that's good. But
so basically what we found out here is Adam is a front runner.
No.
He's not going to root for a team that's not going to win at least 12 games.
No, I don't.
In college football.
I would I'll root for Coastal Carolina. So I'm Jamie Chadwell. How about that?
You'll root for them, but not Cincinnati?
I mean, it's at least it's in North Carolina.
It is. I think it's in South Carolina.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Yes.
Crap. Well, there goes that argument. It's in a Carolina. It's in a Carolina.
I think it's in Myrtle Beach.
That's pretty nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Virginia Beach, Myrtle Beach. There's the connection.
Yes. I mean, JMU, James Madison University, is in the what's the second level of FB? Is it FBS?
Yeah.
They've won some
FCS.
national.
No, they're in FCS.
FCS. What did I say? FBS.
Yeah.
FCS. They've won a couple of national championships and have been a good team. But I want a team that's going to play for the national championship.
Shane in Ashland City texting in says, "Go Tigers!" Talking about the LSU Tigers.
The LSU Tigers. Okay.
I would follow Ed Orgeron anywhere. Maybe you should too.
I would love to hear Adam Vingan's impersonation of Ed Orgeron.
I would have to workshop that. I am a Saints fan, so Baton Rouge just down the road from New Orleans, so that would make sense. But you already have an LSU fan on the station, so
That's true.
I can't do that.
Hips on the text line. Isn't Adam a damn Duke basketball fan? They have a football team,
They do have a football team, but they're like 6-6 every year. What's the fun in that?
You're a front runner.
Hey, Duke didn't make the NCAA tournament this year, so it's okay.
You say you don't want to be a front runner.
And then you talk about Duke not being good enough in football.
Right. So to be a college football fan, you have to be a front runner, but you don't want to be a front runner. So you don't want to be a college football fan.
Look what you're making me do. You're making me very confused.
Josh on the text line says the Auburn Tigers. You could insert yourself into the Iron Bowl.
Ooh.
On the other side.
The Iron Bowl.
Taking on Nick Saban.
Interesting. Okay.
Are there any leader? Do you have any leader in the clubhouse?
Well, I thought my Coastal Carolina idea was good, but then I didn't even realize that it was in South Carolina and not North Carolina.
Josh from Murfreesboro texting in. MTSU needs some fans. The games and beer are cheap.
Hey,
be an MTSU Blue Raider fan.
It's a local connection. You're an MTSU
alum. True Blue.
I could get behind some MTSU. Go to some games, experience. I've heard great things about the environment at MTSU games. Yeah, maybe you could take me to an MTSU tailgate this fall. Well, I'll have a baby, so maybe I won't be able to go. But I'll bring the
built-in
baby.
excuses.
Don't they host Virginia Tech?
I think so. Yeah,
I'm
I may
there.
have that wrong, but
I'm there.
I think they do. I need to look.
MTSU is a good choice. Local. Go local.
We'll continue to take your suggestions. Which college football team should Adam Vingan root for? Let us know on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025.
they visit Virginia Tech this year.
Okay, so they're going to Virginia Tech. So
Correct.
you can travel, make it a road game.
I think they were
Go back to your
supposed to
roots.
host
Last
Virginia
year.
Tech last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then COVID happened. That
Yeah.
was fun. We'll continue this conversation on the other side. This is Robby and Rexrode, streaming live on YouTube, on Periscope, and on Twitch as well, here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Join 102.5 The Game this Thursday from 5 to 7 p.m. for the Nashville SC pre-match party at the Hard Rock Cafe downtown. Party before the match on Broadway and get some game swag, plus register to win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Nashville SC home game. Then head on over to the match at Nissan Stadium at 7:30. Get your tickets now for Nashville SC at NashvilleSC.com and tune into the match on ESPN 94.9. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Adam Vingan in today for Joe Rexrode and taking suggestions on Adam Vingan and his rooting interest in college football. Vingan, not a college football fan, trying to get into it, needs a team to root for. Nate on the text line says, Blue Raiders, it's like a lesser Duke.
Yes. From Blue Devils to Blue Raiders.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, I was born in Durham, North Carolina, which is where Duke is, by the way, and most people probably know that. So, born and raised, and I actually just bought my future child I bought my dad, the big Duke fan, a born and raised onesie for his future grandchild. But you know, my dad grew up. You know, well, he didn't grow up, but he went when he was at Duke, was a season ticket holder for the basketball team. At that time, I'm not sure what the state of the football team was in the mid '80s, but was not a college football fan himself. So college football was not ever a thing in the Vingan household. Like, my dad never watched college football, so I didn't either.
We got to fix this. It's got to be Duke.
What did you just say?
What?
Yeah.
What did I just say?
You just started in like California and ended up in Florida. Like,
What?
Ed Porth was chuckling back there. I don't know.
I don't know what's going on.
you just went round and round.
Let's go back to the text
That's
line.
kind of my thing.
Driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Josh text again. Just choose Auburn. They play Tennessee. That'll give you a rivalry game against Robby. And they're Alabama's nemesis. Play every year in the Iron Bowl. Lots of love for Auburn.
Lots of love for Auburn. Interesting choice. You know, sometimes the best part of being a fan of one team is to just rub it in your friends' faces. I remember when I was in, it was in middle school. I think I was in 6th grade, and Virginia upset Duke in a regular season game, and the local paper, the Virginian Pilot, the next day in the sports section had a banner headline, you know, with a picture of the Virginia team celebrating, and I came to school and the paper was taped to my locker.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes the best part of being a fan of one team is just to stick it to your friends. So if being a fan of Auburn means rubbing it in Tennessee fans' faces, then sure, why not?
Mike on Twitter says, hey, Robby, news for you. Except in Tennessee and the Deep South, nobody really cares about college football, except a few institutions who use it to prop up their self-image. High school football is a different story, but this obsession with college is uniquely here. People at Ohio State, they don't care about football. Michigan.
They care about
Clemson.
football in Big Ten country for sure.
Yeah. I would say so.
What about Northwestern? Should I root for Northwestern?
What?
No?
No.
Why would you root for
I don't know.
Northwestern over Duke?
I was just thinking of a Big Ten school. I was just like, you said Big Ten, so like Northwestern.
Of all the Big Ten schools.
That's the one that came to mind.
That was the first one that
Give
came
me
to
Pat
mind.
Fitzgerald, baby. Come on.
You know what? I could actually see you, Adam, at a Northwestern football game in your Northwestern shirt.
I could.
Not your hat, because I don't think I've ever seen you wear a hat.
Yeah, I'm not much of a hat guy.
But I could see you at a Northwestern game with a Northwestern shirt on.
Scott from Mississippi texting
Purple.
in on the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, just says, hotty toddy. Could be Ole Miss.
Old Miss.
Ole Miss. No old.
Old
No D.
Miss.
Ole Miss.
Ole Miss. Sorry.
I have to get
This is
you
another.
have to southernize you a little bit in
I
here.
want to. I want. That's. I've been here for 6.5 years and it still hasn't happened. But you know, the one thing I don't. Here's one thing I haven't understood about college football. Poor back there, cackling like a jackal.
Old Miss.
Old Miss. Old Yeller.
Gonna take you behind the shed over there if you don't stop laughing. But I know
Lane
it's
Kiffin T-shirt.
I know that
Old Miss tattooed across the forehead.
Enough. I know that it is a tradition in a lot of Southern schools for fans to dress up for games.
Yeah.
For college football games, you know, men wear dress shirts and ties, women wear dresses. That makes zero sense to me. Like,
That's not overly common.
I know, but don't dress up in a business casual to go to a football game.
You know where you can find a lot of people dressing up?
Where?
Old Miss.
Old Miss? Maybe
great tailgating
maybe
environment.
I'll root for Mississippi State because I won't call it Old Miss.
No, you will not root for Mississippi State because I cannot see Adam Vingan having the patience to deal with the cowbells.
No, you can't. Just out there clanging that cowbell out there. It'd be
So,
awesome.
Who's the Old Miss in this room? It's got to be me, you know?
Probably so.
I didn't even realize I was doing it.
Austin on the text line says, I don't really care who you root for as long as it's not Florida. That Tennessee orange would look good on you, though, Adam.
Orange is not my color. It's not.
So you're just not even entertaining the idea
So
of
one thing I
rooting
have,
for the institution here in this state, which you could now call home.
It seems to since I've been here at least, it has brought nothing but pain to the people that care about.
But just
that team.
imagine how great it's going to be when the day comes when we're 87 and they win something.
You know, I think Butch Jones was the coach when I first moved here. Was he the coach in 2015?
Yes, he
yeah,
was.
so yeah, I mean,
He was stacking bricks right when you got here.
yes, he started stacking bricks, and you know they lost to Vanderbilt a couple of times, and that was a big thing because Vanderbilt couldn't beat anybody else. What about Vanderbilt? Why not Vanderbilt?
They're right here. You live really close to them.
I could easily go to games. They've got a new coach. You know, why not?
They play Old Miss every
They
year.
play Old Miss.
Let's go back to the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Chris,
Not that funny.
in Nashville, texting in. Steve Spurrier won the ACC at Duke. That's right, the old ball coach.
Yes.
At Duke.
Former Duke coach. And David Cutcliffe. Now,
That's right.
You know, former Tennessee. Was he the head coach of Tennessee?
Chris also asking you if you've been to Worrell Brothers in Virginia Beach. Worrell Brothers. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Spell it?
Worrell. I don't know what that is.
I don't know either.
So I'm going to take that as a no.
I'll look it up and get back to you.
Okay.
But I think it's settled. I think we've come to a decision. I've considered all of my options. The listeners have presented great suggestions.
We have one more suggestion.
Okay.
Chris texting in, I need Adam covering Mike Leach word for word. So go Bulldogs, Mississippi State.
See?
You and Mike Leach would be a good combo.
Yes.
All right, now you have all your options.
I do like a loquacious coach.
Yes.
I'm going to be a fan of the Old Miss Rebels.
Yes, come on.
Yes.
Lane Kiffin.
Not Ole Miss. Old Miss.
Lane Kiffin keeps on recruiting here in the Tennessee area. He has picked up Adam Vingan. Adam Vingan officially an Ole Miss Rebel. How does it feel?
Got to go to a game.
So this is serious.
I've never been to Mississippi.
Are you going to buy an Ole Miss T-shirt?
I'm going to buy
What is the next step of this fandom that you've now gone
I'm going to buy a misprinted Ole Miss shirt that says Old Miss.
That's got to
we got to find one. We got to find one.
There's got to be one at some like consignment shop somewhere.
Also, I feel like Adam would be the kind of Old Miss fan that would just call them Mississippi.
Probably.
I'm a fan of the Mississippi Rebels.
Yeah. Good old Mississippi Rebels.
You got Eli Manning,
Archie chucking that ball down there.
Yeah. There you go.
So
what's not to like?
So when are you going to buy your business casual outfit to go to an Old Miss game?
Never. You should not wear a suit to go to a football game if you're attending as a fan.
Now that I agree with.
It makes zero sense. You should be in a T-shirt or a sweatshirt, depending on the weather. Maybe you're face painted or you've got body paint on or something. I think it's more appropriate to wear a Speedo and be body painted going to a football game than wearing a shirt and tie.
Ole Miss taking on both Vanderbilt and Tennessee this year. You can go watch Ole Miss take on the Vols November 27th in Neyland Stadium.
Are they here or are they at Old Miss for the Vanderbilt
Neyland
game?
Stadium in Knoxville.
I know, but they're playing Vanderbilt, right?
Yes, they're playing Vanderbilt at Ole Miss.
Oh, okay.
Vaught Hemingway Stadium, your new stadium.
How far is that? How far is the drive from here?
I don't know.
I think it's only like 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah, not bad. I've never been to Mississippi, so there's a first time for everything.
I love how all
Miss.
the options, our listeners did a great job of just presenting option after option. Shane in Ashland City is recruiting hard for LSU in this competition. Chris is recruiting hard for South Carolina in this competition. I mean, we've had South Carolina, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, and the option you went with is Ole Miss.
Well, just because it made Ryan laugh the hardest.
It did.
That's why I chose it.
There you go.
I didn't even realize I was doing it.
So now
I was
you're
like,
a big Lane Kiffin guy, huh?
What's wrong with Lane Kiffin?
There's nothing. Everybody loves some Lane Kiffin.
He did nothing to the state of Tennessee. Nothing.
Yes,
never did
yes.
anything wrong, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, I'm sure that environment in Neyland will be fun on November 27th.
Will that be his first game against Tennessee?
It will be his first game against Tennessee as the head coach.
Because
He has
he
come
worked
back
for
with
Alabama.
Alabama.
Right, he worked for Alabama.
And has graced Neyland Stadium with his presence. But that will be the first time as a head coach of another team.
He went from Tennessee to the Raiders, right?
He went from Tennessee to USC.
Oh, USC.
Went from the Raiders to Tennessee.
Then
went from Tennessee to USC.
Shows how much I know about Lane Kiffin.
So you got to watch out for the loyalty of your guy. But we figured it out. Adam Vingan, now officially a college football fan, a proud supporter of the Ole Miss Rebels. here on the
Old
program.
Miss.
That's right.
I'd love to hear Adam ask pointed questions at Lane Kiffin.
I would too.
In post-game press conferences.
Me too.
I would.
Lane, are you going to be fired?
I never ask it so bluntly. That's not how it goes.
We'll switch conversation when we come back.
I'm outta
We'll
here.
get
You do the
into
rest of the show.
The Nashville Predators, get Adam's thoughts on the Arvidsson trade, the expansion draft, all that on the table coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode live from the Wholesale Link Studios, powered by RumbleOn.com here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in. Final hour of Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Adam Vingan, Ryan Porth here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Taking your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. I got a texter, Scott from Mississippi, saying, tell Adam, welcome to the Old Miss family. This coming from Scott. You're being officially welcomed in.
Thanks, Scott. You won't make fun of me like these guys will.
Nate says, now Vingan has to go party in the Grove at Ole Miss.
I hear it's a good time.
I hear it's a good time.
Do you think I could take Biloxi's own Matthew Olivier
Maybe so.
with me?
The Biloxi Bull.
Do you think Matthew Olivier's ever been to a college football game in the Grove?
Probably not.
Why don't we go together?
Could be an option on the table.
That would be a great athletic story right there. Going to an Old Miss tailgate with Matthew Olivier.
Chris on the text line saying Old Miss sounds like a women's clothing line.
That's what you said.
That's what Chris said.
Oh.
I was reading the text.
You were reading Chris's text during
Correct.
the break. I was like, you and Chris are on the same page. It's actually right next to Joanne Fabrics. And,
That's right.
And Ann Taylor.
That's right.
At the mall.
That's right. New proud supporter of the Ole Miss Rebels, Adam Vingan, here on the program.
That's me.
Adam, we got to this earlier in the show. I want to get your thoughts on Victor Arvidsson, the trade that sends him to the LA Kings. The Predators receive a second-round pick this year in the draft, a third-round pick the following year in the draft as well, in exchange for Arvidsson to the LA Kings. What did you think of this move? Was it surprising to you that David Poile and the Predators went this route? And what do you think this means for the Predators in their immediate future here as they continue to navigate their way through this offseason?
No, I wasn't surprised. We talked about it at the top of the show. You know, it seemed like the path of least resistance for the Predators if they were looking to finally shake up the core. We talked about Arvidsson's contract, what remains of it, 3 years, $4.25 million cap hit, manageable in a flat cap world. The Los Angeles Kings, I feel like, are a good landing spot for Arvidsson. They're still in the process of rebuilding, but I feel like they're starting to exit that process. They've got a lot of young players in their system. They still have veteran leadership in Anze Kopitar and Drew Doughty, but they needed a veteran forward to provide support for their younger players in the top six. And, I think Victor can accomplish that. I think the Predators did a good job of getting assets back for Arvidsson. David Poile insinuated in his interview on Darren Donica Chase last week that perhaps he would not have protected Victor Arvidsson in the expansion draft. And if the Seattle Kraken would have taken Arvidsson, they would have gotten nothing for him. But now they have a higher pick in this year's draft and a third-round pick next year. I mean, like I said earlier, I don't really see anything wrong with what the Predators did. Like, I can't really poke any holes in this trade, and I think big picture it means that the core group is finally on notice, despite the diminishing returns in the postseason since qualifying for the Stanley Cup Final 4 years ago. The core group has remained largely intact. This is really the first time. I guess you could throw PK Subban in the mix from a couple of years ago, but it's the first time that the player that's been here from the beginning of the Predators' revival in 2014-15 has been moved. And I think other players in that position, Philip Forsberg, Ryan Johansson, Matthew Shane, Ryan Ellis, Matthias Ekholm, those players need to understand that no one is safe except for Roman Josi. But no one is safe. And I think this is what fans wanted. A couple of weeks ago, I did a fan survey. Around 950 people responded. And one of the questions I asked was, ideally, how should the Predators approach this offseason? And more than 75% of respondents went with what I called a soft reset, which I described as tweaking the core and filling the roster holes with prospects. And it looks like that's what the Predators are trying to do.
Well, now I think, what I thought of immediately was this is probably pretty good news that Mikael Granlund is going to be back. I mean, they freed up money. They've got over $22 million worth of cap space at the moment. Now, that sounds like a lot. You still have a lot of things you've got to take care of. Saros needs a new contract. What's going to happen with Pekka Rinne? Is he going to come back? If so, what's that going to cost the Predators? So there's still a lot of things left to be done, some restricted free agents as well to take care of. And let's not forget, you still have to sign Matthias Ekholm and Philip Forsberg to an extension. So I know that the money part of that does not come into effect until next season with both of those guys. But a lot left to do this offseason for David Poile and company with the Predators. Not even mentioning the expansion draft coming up here in just a few weeks.
I'll be so glad when that's over.
I would imagine that you
just like I was 4 years ago.
So let's start on Granlund, because I was on with Darren Donick and Chase last week, and I think this is an interesting question. Like, I look at this market right now, I have no idea what Mikael Granlund is going to be worth on the open market, because, and you said this earlier, the Predators, I mean, David Poile in his season-ending press conference a year ago, not this past one, but the season before that, essentially said goodbye to Mikael Granlund and Craig Smith. They were gone. They were moving on. And obviously, free agency with COVID and everything going on, it did not work out the way that Granlund had envisioned. And ultimately, he ends up back in Nashville. 1-year deal, $3.75 million. It was a great deal for the Predators. It worked out extremely well for them. And obviously, John Hines and David Poile, they love Mikael Granlund. He's been very good for them since John Hines took over as the full-time coach, and they want him back. I just wonder what is Granlund's value going to be on the open market? How much do you think Granlund is going to cost the Predators if they're able to reach a deal and bring him back into the fold?
So the Evolving Hockey website, which is a great resource for hockey fans and reporters, just like Cap Friendly, Evolving Hockey has a contract projections tool, and I don't know exactly. I don't have the algorithm in front of me in terms of how they come up with the projections, but for Granlund, they said if he re-signs with the Predators, the most likely contract is a 3-year deal with a cap hit of $5.185 million. Now, that's a very specific number, and it could be, a rounder number, $5 million, 5.5, or,
Sure.
5.25. But, I think that, to me, that is a reasonable number. I know we talked earlier, Porth was wanting less term, perhaps a higher cap hit. But if, like in the range of 5 to 5.5, I think is reasonable for Mikael Granlund. He was playing under a contract before this past season that was 5.75, and he took a pay cut, re-signed with the Predators. That he's going to be looking to recoup some of that lost salary, and you don't blame him for that. So to me, if Granlund, I think Granlund is around I would say a $5 million player, maybe a little bit more. If you get closer to 5.5, I think you're stretching it a little bit. But if they can get him under contract for 2 years 10, 2 years 11, 3 years 15, something in that range, I don't think that's a bad deal at all.
Yeah, I think. Look, I think he's important to what they do. My question is, if you sign him, which I agree they should, I think it's a good idea. Where's he playing? Is he going to be your number 2 center like he was to close out the season? You still have, at the moment, Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene, and you brought Matt Duchene in to be a centerman. He finished the season last year on the wing, and at this point, and I said this on Darren Donick and Chase too, like, if I'm the Predators, I'm not really all that concerned with making Matt Duchene happy. You need to produce where they're putting you in the lineup at this point. I mean, you've come in, it's been 2 years, you've not been productive, nowhere close to the amount of money that you're being paid. So I'm not really worried about the way Duchene feels about it, but just logistically looking at this lineup, if Granlund is re-signed, where are you putting him? Or is he going back to the wing? Are you keeping him down the middle at center? That's going to be something that John Hines has to figure out, and I think it's pretty clear. They like the way he played down the middle for them last year to close out the season. That's going to be interesting to kind of figure out how they go about handling that.
Like if I'm like every season is a new opportunity, but if I'm looking at Mikhail Granlund and Matt Duchene and thinking about, okay, who should start at second line center, I'm giving Mikhail Granlund the benefit of the doubt. You know, he held that position down while Matt was injured and was playing so well that when Matt came back, Matt never got that position again. And the line, he played on the line with Calle Jarnkrok. Granlund did with Calle Jarnkrok and Luke Kunin. It was very productive in the regular season. Had its moments in the playoffs, but I mean the thing about Granlund is he can play on the wing, which he did up until that injury to Duchene. So I think having him in the top six, certainly. Would not be an issue. I mean, if you had a top six group that included Philip Forsberg, Ryan Johansson, Ellie Tolvanen, Mikhail Granlund, Matt Duchene, and Philip Tomasino,
Yep.
That's not bad. I mean, it's not like, it's not Stanley Cup caliber, but it's not bad. I think Granlund, certainly opened some eyes around the league in the second half of the season, as did several players on the Predators, but. The Predators are going to take a run at it. The $4.25 million, which the Predators created by trading Victor Arvidsson in a flat cap world, is not an insignificant chunk of change.
Sure.
So, before you were wondering how could they make that work if no big changes are made. I mean, you could basically give most of the money that you traded, you freed by trading Victor Arvidsson to Mikhail Granlund. And I don't think that's a bad trade-off, to be honest. I mean, we talked earlier about the players, needing to produce in order to be given the tough assignments in the biggest moments, and Granlund did that. I mean, and the thing about Mikhail Granlund, and remember John Hines said this at the end of the season, is that he's a highly skilled player, but he doesn't rely on his skill.
Yep.
And that, to me, is sort of the embodiment of what the Predators are trying to be under John Hines. They want to play they want to create more offense, and you have skilled players. But Mikhail Granlund doesn't need to make highlight reel plays in order to be an effective member of this team, and I think that's incredibly important.
ESPN 94.9 is the home for Nashville Sounds baseball. Tonight the Sounds take on the Gwinnett Stripers, the AAA affiliate of the Atlanta Braves. Pre-game show with Jeff Him starts at 5:50, and the first pitch is at 6:05. Nashville Sounds baseball on ESPN 94.9, presented by 312 Pizza Company. We'll continue the conversation on the Predators when we come back, taking your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. And get to this, could the Victor Arvidsson trade maybe highlight a problem going on in the Predators locker room? We'll get to that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. This Friday, it's your chance to participate in the Nashville SC Pick to Click, brought to you by Camarena Tequila. If you guess correctly which player scores a goal in the game this Saturday night, you win a prize pack and a 4-pack of tickets to an upcoming Nashville SC home game. Make sure you participate coming up later this week at 9:45 a.m. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode streaming live on Periscope, on YouTube, and on Twitch as well. Talking Predators. Taking your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Steven texting in saying, when is the deadline for the Predators to have players protected for the draft?
July 17th.
There you go.
July 17th, which is a week from Saturday?
11 days away.
Yes. Or Friday. I don't know. I think it's Saturday. I can't do math. Or say Ole Miss. Yes, July 17th. I believe 4 p.m. Central is the deadline, but either way, July 17th is when every team in the NHL, with the exception of the Vegas Golden Knights, who do not participate in the expansion draft this time around.
Which is very popular, by the way.
Which is very popular among fans who think they got too much too soon. The rest of the league has to submit those lists. And last time, those lists were made public, I feel like a couple days later. Before the expansion draft. I'm not sure if they're doing that again this time. I think they should. I think they will. But yes, they have until the end of next week to formalize those lists and send them to the league.
Let's go back to the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Got a texter that says, I've seen several tweets saying the rest of the Predators core is very upset with the Arvidsson trade. How upset do you think that they are? I can tell you, based on some conversations that I've had, that there are certainly some members of that core that are not happy with it. Now, I don't think it's the world's biggest deal. I think you expect that when you trade away a player that's been here for a while. Obviously, Victor Arvidsson was very popular in that room with the way he plays the game, how tenacious he is. He's a guy that he's been here for a long time. There's a lot of respect in that room for Victor Arvidsson and a lot of close friendships to Victor Arvidsson as well. So by no means was that a popular decision by David Poile to trade away Victor Arvidsson. But it also, it's professional sports. You got to find a way to deal with it. And I don't think this is just going to be some lingering issue in that Predators room. They got over Shea Weber being traded. They'll get over Victor Arvidsson being traded as well. The interesting part to me, Adam, comes with the contract extensions, because do I think that Philip Forsberg being upset at Victor Arvidsson being traded is going to lead to him not signing a contract extension by itself? No. But if I'm Philip Forsberg, I'm pretty interested to look at the rest of this offseason and see what the Predators do and see what direction they're going. Do you feel like they're trending in a direction where you can be competitive again in a couple years, and I mean truly competitive for a Stanley Cup and start competing for a cup? Or do you feel like maybe a soft reset or maybe a miniature rebuild is taking place? I'm interested to see what the rest of this offseason looks like, and it's kind of interesting to think about from Matthias Ekholm's and Philip Forsberg's perspective, both eligible to sign a contract extension this offseason, both with 1 year remaining on their deals. Philip Forsberg 1 year away from unrestricted free agency. I would be interested to see, if I'm him, what the rest of this Predators offseason looks like before I just nail down making a decision about my long-term future here.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And July 28th is the day that unrestricted free agents, 1 year away from unrestricted free agency, players who are 1 year away from unrestricted free agency can re-sign. So the first day that Matthias Ekholm and Ryan Ellis, and Matthias Ekholm and I'm so used to saying Ekholm and Ellis, Matthias Ekholm and Philip Forsberg can officially re-sign. And if I'm Philip Forsberg, to me, Matthias Ekholm, I'm not sure it's he's undergoing the same calculus as Philip Forsberg might. Philip Forsberg, I think if he's within his rights to do that, and I would not be shocked if you remember, Roman Josi did not re-sign until the season had started. It was a different situation, but Roman Josi did not re-sign his 8-year, re-sign and sign that 8-year contract until the season had started. Would it surprise me if the same thing happened with Philip Forsberg? No, not at all. Philip Forsberg might believe, hey, I was playing really well at the beginning of last season. If I can come in and do that again, I'm going to raise my value. his agent might think if players of Philip Forsberg's caliber don't get to the market frequently, if that is something he's wanting to do, perhaps that could increase his leverage. But on the same side, it is a distraction. If Philip Forsberg shows up to training camp in September and doesn't have a contract extension in tow, there are going to be a lot of questions about it, just as there were for Roman Josi in training camp a couple of years ago. A lot of questions about why he hadn't signed yet, and ultimately it happened. But no, it would not shock me if Philip Forsberg and Matthias Ekholm took their time. Like, they don't have to sign this summer. It would be very helpful for the Predators for them to do that, but they are under no obligation to do so.
What do you think Philip Forsberg's next contract is going to look like? He's kind of an interesting guy to try to figure out because, and I know you and I have talked about this before, like I always feel like we're talking about Forsberg as just kind of waiting on him to hit that next level of, can he be a 40-goal guy? Can he be a point-per-game player in this league? And, I mean, the body of work at this point suggests to me that, no, we're probably not going to see Philip Forsberg do that. He's very good. He's a very good player. He has a skill set unlike the Predators have really had before with what he brings to the table on the ice. And certainly, I think Philip Forsberg needs to be and should be a part of the future for the Predators and their core moving forward. My question is, what do you think the price is going to be if Philip Forsberg were to reach unrestricted free agency, or if Philip Forsberg re-signs with the Predators? What number does he fall at? Currently playing under a $6 million per year cap hit.
Yeah, I did this exercise around the trade deadline because there were a lot of rumors swirling that even Philip Forsberg could be on the move. And, I thought that at the time Philip Forsberg could be worth up to $9 million a season. I think that the player I used to compare him was Jeff Skinner, who signed an 8-year, $72 million contract with the Buffalo Sabres, which has not worked out, by the way.
It has not.
But, he still signed it. And the year before, he had a career year. In his first year in Buffalo, he had 40-plus goals playing with Jack Eichel. But, when I think about Philip Forsberg over the past couple of seasons, first of all, he has, remember at the beginning of his career, he never missed games. I think his first 3 seasons, he played in first 3 full seasons. He played in every game. And over the past 2 or 3 years, he's missed 14, 15, some games along, that amount of games. I look at Philip Forsberg and I see a player who I think has who still has a lot of potential. But I think we're at a point where we can confidently say that Philip Forsberg is a 25 to 30 goal, 60 to 65 point player. And that's still a good player.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it.
There's nothing wrong with that. But is Philip Forsberg the elite level forward that this team desperately needs? Probably not.
Right.
I mean, he's still in his prime. He's what, 26?
26.
He's still in his prime. But I think we've seen enough from Philip to know that he has those moments like he did at the beginning of this past season where he can just go off and score a ton of goals. But he's going to disappear for a while, and he might get hurt.
That's been the thing lately, is the injury part of this. I mean, he's been hurt each of the past 3 years, and that's at this point. I mean, that's something that I think that's got to factor into these discussions.
And these are not like he's missed a game or two. He's missed like a month. He's missed 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So I look at Philip Forsberg, and if I'm his agent, I'm looking at Philip and saying, I'm looking at the Predators, and saying, you're paying Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene $8 million each. My client is more important to your team's success than either of those players. So I want him to be the highest paid forward on the team.
But if you're David Poile and the Predators, do you do that? Like Philip Forsberg, to me, like he's not a $9 million guy.
No.
He's not an $8.5 million guy.
To me, he's like a $7.5 million guy. 7.5.
So if they're wanting 8,
here comes
or if
Porth.
they're wanting 8.5,
What does Porth have to say?
do you do that if you're David Poile and the Predators? I mean, that's a hefty price for Philip Forsberg.
Well, the question that kind of popped in mind for me in the last handful of days, we've seen Edmonton re-sign Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. We've seen Minnesota re-sign Joel Eriksson-Ek. And in both cases, they took less money to get more term on the deal. Do you think Forsberg would qualify as someone who would do that?
That's a good question.
I don't know.
What was Ryan Nugent-Hopkins' previous cap hit? Do you know off the top of your head?
I don't know off the top of my head.
I'm looking at it right now. So he signed an 8-year contract with a $5.125 million cap hit. His previous contract was a 7-year, $42 million. So he went from $6 million cap hit to 5.125.
Like I don't.
My
I don't
gut
really
says
see
no.
a scenario
My
where
gut
he
says
goes
no.
down in salary.
I agree. I don't see a scenario where he goes down in salary.
The question is how much is too much for Philip Forsberg? Like if the price is going to be 8,
That's to me that's
are you paying that if you're the Predators?
unless he has the season we've been waiting for from Philip Forsberg for 6 years, I'm not paying $8 million for Philip Forsberg.
Let's go back to the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Chris texting in, to be what everybody thinks Forsberg needs to be, he needs to break the single-season goals record and then break it again. So the power forward for 2 consecutive seasons. Only then will he be what everybody thinks or hopes that he can and should be. He also needs to stay healthy. Problem is, I hear what Chris is saying there, but if Forsberg goes out this year and breaks the single-season goal-scoring record, I mean, that's in a contract year. We've seen players play really well in a contract year before.
I can think of one.
Is that going to be what he is moving forward? Or is that going to be a one-year wonder and he's right back to, again, a very good player, 25, 30 goals. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's not worth $8.5 million at that point, is it?
No. To me, like I said, he is somewhere in the $7 to $7.5 million range. We were talking about this at the beginning of the show. We were talking about the Stanley Cup final. And I'm watching Josh Anderson score that goal to win the game. And I'm thinking to myself, man, the Predators could use a player like that. And Philip Forsberg has it within him to do that. I would venture to, I don't think this is, breaking news, but I would say that Philip Forsberg probably more skilled than Josh Anderson. And I would say so. And I think Philip Forsberg has, one of the first things that John Hines said about Philip Forsberg was that he wanted him to emphasize his power over his skill. And I think we've seen that a little bit more from Philip over the past couple of seasons since John became coach a year and a half ago. But there's just not enough. Like, we think about the goal he scored to open the scoring in the playoffs. I mean, that's a goal that nobody else on the team can score. But, where was he for the rest of the series?
Yeah.
He's had some huge playoff moments. He's been big in the playoffs. But I just look at Philip Forsberg and I just think to myself, this was a guy who clearly has the tools to be an elite player. I just don't see it. I just think at this point, it's probably not going to happen. And like I said, if he ends up being a 30-point, 60-goal guy for the rest of his career or on pace for that, and there's, I think that's fine. That you need players like that. But Philip Forsberg is not the frontline forward that is going to lead a team to a Stanley Cup.
Single-day tickets for the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix scheduled for August 6th through the 8th go on sale today, beginning at 10 a.m. with a majority of the reserve grandstand sold out. A limited amount of single-day reserve grandstand and general admission tickets will be available for each of the 3 days of the Urban Racing Festival featuring NTT IndyCar Series. Get your tickets today by visiting musiccitygp.com/tickets, Ticketmaster.com, or call the Titans Ticket Office at 615-555-4650. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation on the Predators, taking your thoughts on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, as well as getting to a comment made by some people in the Tampa Bay government that has me rooting for the Montreal Canadiens to complete the comeback. We'll get to that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Adam Vingan, Ryan Porth here with you today on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Adam is in for Joe Rexrode, who is on vacation in California this week. So glad to have Adam in today, tomorrow, and on Thursday as well. Taking your thoughts on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Andrew texting in. You can't pay Forsberg $7 million to miss 25% of each season. What is the comparable player that has his performance and pay who makes $7 to $7.5 million and scores 25 to 30 goals?
Okay, so I punched into Cap Friendly, a cap hit of between $7 and $8 million this past season. There were 21 forwards who made between $7 and $8 million in terms of cap hit this season. The most productive of that group, Ryan O'Reilly, had 54 points in 56 games, 24 goals, 30 assists. Joe Pavelski, underneath him, so O'Reilly had a $7.5 million cap hit. Joe Pavelski had a $7 million cap hit. He had 25 goals, 51 points. Max Pacioretty, $7 million cap hit, 24 goals, 51 points. Kyle Connor, $7.1-ish million cap hit, 26 goals, 24 points.
Yeah.
So
right in there.
Right around there.
Okay. Look, if you told me today that Forsberg ended up signing a, 8-year deal, $7 million per for the Predators, I'd probably sign up for that right now if I'm David Poile and the Predators.
Yeah, me too.
That's still a lot of money with Duchesne and Johansson and Forsberg all tied up there, but I think Forsberg's important to get locked back up. And we've got somebody on Periscope saying Forsberg leaves for the money is their prediction. Sean saying that on Periscope, that Forsberg hits free agency and leaves for the money. If you start getting into $8 million territory, $8.5 million, that could be the case. I don't know. I don't know if I'd be willing to go back down that road if I'm David Poile and company.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, you can lose one of those $8 million contracts in the expansion draft.
Yeah, if you're going to lose one of them, then there goes that money. Yeah, I mean, I can see that. I think looking at those players, some of the other ones on that list that I was listing off, Matthew Barzal, 17 goals, 45 points. He has a $7 million cap hit. Evander Kane also has a $7 million cap hit, 22 goals, 49 points. Phil Kessel has an $8 million cap hit, 20 goals, 43 points. James Van Riemsdyk in Philadelphia has a $7 million cap hit, 17 goals, 43 points. So, yeah, I mean, I think a $7 to $7.5 million, excuse me, can't speak today, obviously, on the radio. I think a $7 to $7.5 million contract makes sense. I'm just skeptical that Forsberg would accept that.
All right, we've got to get to this because I've been wanting to get to this all day long. Montreal stays alive last night to force a Game 5 in the Stanley Cup Final. They win in overtime. Josh Anderson gives the Habs a 3-2 win, and it's nice. You get a nice win at home, stay alive in the series. Going back, you're trailing 3-1 in the series. But before the game even took place yesterday, there was some controversy. Tampa Bay, obviously, they won the Stanley Cup a year ago, going for back-to-back titles, and maybe a little bit of arrogance starting to creep in a little bit. The mayor of Tampa Bay, Jane Castor, was making some comments at a press conference, and basically, without saying it, was like, yeah, I kind of hope the Lightning lose and come back. Let's hear those comments from Mayor Jane Castor of Tampa Bay about what she hopes happens with the Lightning in their run of the Stanley Cup.
Here's what we would like. What we would like is for the Lightning to take it a little bit easy, to give the Canadians just the smallest break, allow them to win one at home, and then bring it back to the Amalie Arena for the final and the winning of the Stanley Cup. But we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but they are playing some amazing, amazing hockey.
So that was Tampa Bay Mayor Jane Castor basically saying, yeah, I hope the Lightning lose in Game 4 against Montreal so they can then come back home and win it in front of their home fans here in Tampa Bay.
Now, don't mess with the hockey gods. Doesn't she know that?
Now, the players, obviously, they were trying to win the game last night. So it's not like they just came out there and threw it.
Go out there and lose one for the mayor.
But I will tell you, it got my wheels turning, and I was like, man, I really hope I really hope somehow, some way, Montreal is able to come back and win this thing, because that audio will be played on loop, just of her saying, you know what, yeah, they're so good they can lose. Just give Montreal the night off. They can go out there and win, and we'll come back in Game 5, and we'll wrap this bad boy up at home, baby. Looking forward to that.
Forget about Watergate. This would be the most played piece of political-related audio we've ever heard.
Ever heard? Yeah.
So
it would be for people who believe in jinxes, and I'm not one of them.
I'm not either.
They would call this the Castor Curse.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
there
The
you
Castor
go.
Curse.
The Castor Curse. So,
I like that.
So as we were talking about earlier, the Lightning won the Stanley Cup in the bubble last year. So no family in the building.
Look, I get wanting to win in front of your home fans. That's awesome. Like, I understand why she feels the way that she feels, and she wants to see her city be able to celebrate, and they didn't really get to last year in the bubble, so this is a much different scenario. I understand. I'm cool. I understand the thought process. You start doing stuff like that, though, and all of a sudden Montreal wins Game 5. It's 3-2. You're going back home to Bell Center. Maybe force a Game 7. It's a dangerous game to start playing, Ryan Porth. A dangerous game.
What I want to know,
It is.
Here's what I want to know. If the Lightning win the Stanley Cup, as we expect them to, despite losing last night, will they invite Tom Brady to the boat parade, get him drunk on white wine spritzers, and have him toss the Stanley Cup from one boat to the next?
Why not?
There's a significant size difference between the Lombardi Trophy and the Stanley Cup.
Would the Stanley Cup float, or would it sink?
I think it would sink.
I think it would sink.
I think it would sink, too.
I think it would sink.
It's like the old David Letterman game. Will it float? The Stanley Cup. What do we think? All three of us say sink.
I think it's been at the bottom of some pools over the course of time.
Now, if Tampa wins tomorrow, they should just put Jane Castor out there instead of Steven Stamkos and have Gary Bettman.
Just have her receive the cup.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Just lift that thing straight in the air. This is for you, Tampa. I did this.
It can be like every other sport where they don't give it to the player first.
Yeah. Just give it to the mayor.
Give it to the mayor. Yeah, no, I saw that the other day, and I was just like, there's no way Tampa's winning Game 4.
Kevin on Periscope says, are you sure that was the Tampa Bay mayor, or was that a character on The Simpsons? Nice Simpsons reference with Adam in here today.
Did he think she sounded like Marge Simpson?
I don't know.
Maybe.
I'm just glad there was a Simpsons reference with you in here.
It did take until 9:40, but we made it. I also would like to point out that I've made it through almost the entire show without leaving the mute button on, which gives me one up on Joe Rexrode.
You've just done what the Tampa Bay mayor has done, and that is called your shot maybe a little too early.
Well, you can't sabotage me back there by changing my microphone. When
I never do.
No.
I know.
never
I'm
do.
just making sure that now that I've said it, that you won't do that.
I thought about it, but I like you.
During the old miss segment?
Adam Vingan,
I was not going to mute your mic during that segment.
We were letting that puppy fly. Absolutely.
Why would you make a puppy fly? Doesn't sound like fun.
Oh, boy. Here we go. The dad joke quota, it's been far exceeded today here on the
I'm
show.
working on it.
With Ryan Porth and with Adam Vingan.
Well, at least I have an excuse. What's your excuse?
That is true. Nashville SC fans join ESPN 94.9 this Monday from 7 to 8 p.m. for NSC Backstage featuring Nashville SC players and coaches. Watch the show online via 102.5 The Game's Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and theGameNashville.com. NSC Backstage brought to you by Camarena Tequila, the official tequila of Nashville SC. We'll look ahead to the NBA Finals getting underway tonight in Game 1. We'll do that coming up next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, streaming live on Periscope, on YouTube, and on Twitch as well, right here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in. Final segment of the day here on Robby and Rexrode, ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Adam Vingan, Ryan Porth here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Game 1 of the NBA Finals is tonight, which, by the way, you can hear Game 1 coverage tonight starting at 7 o'clock on 102.5 The Game. The Bucks and the Suns, Phoenix Suns hosting Game 1 of the NBA Finals. A bit of a different look to the Finals this year. The Suns back in the finals for the first time since 1993. The Bucks finally get through the Eastern Conference. They punch their ticket, Giannis and company, in the NBA Finals for the first time under this new regime. What do you think of the NBA playoffs so far, Adam Vingan? Do you like that there's been some new blood involved in the mix here? And what do you think of this matchup between the Bucks and the Suns in the 2021 version of the NBA Finals?
I do like that it is a unique matchup between Phoenix and Milwaukee. I am a big basketball fan in general. I do watch the NBA playoffs, and certainly when the postseason started, you expected the Lakers to be in the mix, the Brooklyn Nets, the Denver Nuggets. The Bucks were again among the teams to beat in the Eastern Conference, but oftentimes they have fallen short. So they weren't as highly touted entering the postseason as they've been in other years, with the Sixers playing well and the Brooklyn Nets too. I really do like it. As I said earlier, I heard last night on SportsCenter that no player on either side has won an NBA championship, so that's exciting. It's great to see Chris Paul in the NBA Finals. I believe in terms of games played overall in the regular season, and when making your first finals appearance, I think he's second all time. Giannis Antetokounmpo, who I believe is doubtful for tonight's Game 1 with a hyperextended knee. It was good to see him and the Bucks, break through. I think the Suns are going to win this series. I think a lot of it depends on the health of Antetokounmpo. But I just like the Suns roster. I like the mix that they have there. Chris Paul, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, Jay Crowder, Mikal Bridges. I think it's just a good group. I think the Bucks have a good team as well. Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, the list goes on. But I think it's going to be a close series. I think I'm going to give it to the Suns, though. But I'm really looking forward to watching it for sure.
The key to this series, in my mind, which version of Chris Middleton shows up. Like that to me is the key. If he shows up and he shoots like he shot, I want to say, was it Game 5 in the last series where he just went nuts and had 38? I mean, if he shoots like that, they're going to be in good shape. And look, that's a high bar every game, but especially with Giannis and his health being what it is, like they're going to need Chris Middleton to be a beast in this series to have a chance to win. So, look, I think we're going to see Giannis at some point. You said he was doubtful tonight for Game 1. I don't think that'll be tonight. I think at some point in the series we'll see Giannis get back in there. Maybe it's as soon as Game 2. But regardless, he's not going to be at 100%. They're going to need Chris Middleton to really shoot the ball well. And if he can do that, I like the Bucks. I like the Bucks to win this series. I'm going to go ahead and just throw it out there. I've got Bucks winning in 7. Okay. I think it's going to be an awesome series.
I think I'm going to go with Suns in 6. I do think Giannis's health looms large over this series, and I agree. Chris Middleton can be very hot and cold. He can have incredible shooting nights, and then he can have nights where he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, as we like to say. But I just like the cast of players that the Suns have. I think, DeAndre Ayton, especially in that series against Denver, did an admirable job of swallowing up Nikola Jokic and didn't let him take over the series, and the Suns, beating the Nuggets in that round. Devin Booker is a superstar. I think I like the complementary pieces. Former member of your Miami Heat, Jay Crowder. He'll
key to getting to the finals.
Yeah, he can do a little bit of everything. He can play big down low. He can shoot from long range. I think I'm going to go with the Suns. I would like to see Chris Paul win a championship. I think he's been in this league for a long time. He's been around.
I would not.
Think about all the teams that Chris Paul has played for.
Oh, I know.
played for the Thunder when they were, he was with the Thunder recently. He was with the Rockets. He was with the Clippers. He was with the New Orleans Hornets. Am I missing anybody?
I don't think so.
I know.
I mean, he's been all over the place. Look,
Yeah.
Chris Paul, he's a fine person. He's a fine individual.
Great State Farm ambassador.
Yeah, all that's great. People give James Harden a hard time for flopping. Chris Paul is the king flopper of the NBA. It's awful to watch. It's been really bad in these playoffs too.
I remember when Chris Paul, when he was with Wake Forest, being suspended by the ACC for I don't know if it was a punch or a kick or an elbow. Julius Hodge of NC State in the nether regions. Yeah. That was like 20-something years ago. But I remember that, But
so because of his flopping, I'm not rooting for Chris Paul and the Suns.
Just because of his flopping.
Yeah. I will say, though, I'm interested to see how this finals does from like a rating standpoint. Like how much investment is there throughout the country with the Bucks and the Suns. I mean,
the ratings throughout the NBA playoffs have been great.
They've been really good.
They've been really good.
And honestly, I've been a little surprised by that based on the star power that's gotten knocked out early. I mean, you're talking about a whole playoff run essentially with no LeBron. Lost in the first round.
You lost. Well, the good news for, like, when you think about markets, like, at least, I mean, I don't know how much the Clippers draw in Los Angeles from a rating standpoint, but at least they were there until the Western Conference Finals.
Right.
They lost New York, both the Knicks and the Nets. I don't know where Phoenix and Milwaukee rank on, the Nielsen, ratings or whatever the market size.
Sure.
But I think there will be an early boost just because it's a unique matchup and people will want to say, Suns, Bucks, that's interesting. It's not LeBron versus Golden State, but there was certainly, interest in seeing, the best player in the game, LeBron James, versus, a super team in Golden State and with, Kevin Durant and Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. So, if you were to tell me at the end of this series that a report comes out that this was the least watched NBA Finals since blank, like, I'm not going to be shocked. But I do think it'll perform better than we anticipate.
I'm interested to see how that goes. We'll find out starting tonight in Game 1 of the NBA Finals. Got just a few minutes left here on the show. Let's go back to our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Got some texts to get to. We'll try to get to them as quickly as possible. Got a texter that says, with Arvidsson gone, who steps up to fill his shoes on this Predators lineup? So there is a hole now in the top 6. Who's going to fill that hole?
And I think Ellie Tolvanen is going to get more responsibility. When we saw him spend a lot of time in Arvidsson's former spot on the line with Philip Forsberg and Ryan Johansson. So I could see Ellie Tolvanen continuing to do that, getting more power play time, getting more responsibility 5-on-5. And I'm curious about Philip Tomasino. He was drafted as a center, but he's been playing right wing. He played right wing for the World Junior team in Canada. He played right wing in the AHL this season. He had 32 points in 29 games, all rookie selection in the AHL. A lot to like about his game. I know the coaches down in Chicago, both the Carolina coaches and the Milwaukee Admirals coaches, who were there this season, have raved about Philip. So I think he's going to be given a really good chance. And if you're talking about a youth movement, I think putting a 19-year-old in the top 6 certainly constitutes that. So, I think he'll be given a shot for sure.
Sam on the text line. I think Forsberg has the potential to be elite, but the system we run and the players surrounding him take away from his potential. There's a reason players are coming here and not producing as they were. The system and players just don't work here. Granlund, Turris, Duchesne all go from 60-plus points to 30-point players because our systems do not work. What do you think of that?
Well, you're also talking about 2 coaches and 2 systems.
Right.
So did the Predators employ 2 coaches whose systems did not fit the personnel? I mean, I find that hard to believe. That isn't a bit like, we've seen, I think Mikael Granlund is the textbook example. I mean, he was a non-factor under Peter Laviolette.
Yep.
And as soon as John Hines came here, he became, like, perhaps the most important forward on the team. So it is an interesting point. It's something I've thought about a lot. Kyle Turris Kyle Turris didn't, failed here. Ryan Hartman failed here. Mikael Granlund has been up and down. Matt Duchesne hasn't been productive since he's been here. I get it. Sometimes is it the personnel that David Poyle is he choosing the wrong players? I remember having someone tell me last summer that the Predators are acquiring brand name players without looking under the hood. Perhaps it's a personnel thing, it's a scouting thing versus a systems thing. But that is a question that has been asked for years and is worth continuing to ask.
Well, and it's a question that we're going to continue to get here until you start bringing in some players via free agency, via trade that work out and hit that next level. And that's going to have to be something that starts to hit on a more regular basis with David Poyle and the Predators as we move forward here. Adam, it was fun having you in today. You'll be back tomorrow and on Thursday as well. The great Adam Vingan in here today on Robby and Rexrode. Appreciate you, brother.
Go Old Miss.
Go Old Miss. New Old Miss fan, Adam Vingan, here today on the program. That does it for us today. Make sure you check out Game 1 coverage tonight at 7 o'clock here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. We'll be back at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Darren Donica Chase is coming up next. This is ESPN 102.5 The Game.